taking control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all connected but separated, misunderstood and so frustrated. A million armies of one have invaded, watching you and watching me. We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. We the people have taken over. We the people are little brother, standing by to dethrone each other, watching you and watching me. Paranoid, the lens is our weapon, desensitized in our lust for attention, democratized by our voyeur obsessions, watching you and watching me. Slaves to perfection, don't let them project you as you are. Feel your every flaw. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching. We watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We will expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of Spaced Out Radio or Spaced Out Radio Limited is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised.
Bumblefoot. Bumblefoot.
Are you experienced?
Stop right there!
From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you, listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott. You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on iTunes and TuneIn. Follow Dave on Twitter at spacedoutradio.com, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Game on! Game on! Game on!
Dave, oh Dave, are you playing with Bigfoot and aliens again?
The password is...
Alright.
Okay, seriously, what's with the pointies?
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio. Mr. Bumblefoot, Dave is ready for liftoff.
Seriously, Dave? Really?
Chloe. Bye-bye. Love you. Bye-bye.
Captain, take your seat on my left. It's time for takeoff.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, start, 2, 1, boost ignition, and liftoff.
Just to be there with you, and I still trip over my feet, and my heart still skips a beat. I'm such a lucky guy, 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott, and it's great to have you along for the ride wherever you are on this fantastic planet we love to call Earth. Yes, we're right here, right now, live in Uncle Jimbo's cabin, right here in the Great White North on this Friday night, early Saturday morning if you're on the East Coast. Let's welcome in everyone listening in on spacedoutradio.com, on Spreaker, on the United Public Radio Network, Renegade Talk Radio, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and on Revolution Radio as we do this thing every night of the week, rocking in and out of every show thanks to our resident guitar god, Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy. Yes, Bumblefoot is the official sound of Spaced Out Radio. Hey, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, you can follow me at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes. And, of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com. If you want to take part in tonight's show, because we don't take phone calls around here, you'll have to sign into one of the chat rooms, though. On Revolution Radio, on Spreaker, on the UPRN chat room, or on Facebook at the SOR Space Travelers Club. Or if you're on Twitter, just go to hashtag Spaced Out Radio and I will get to your questions in there as well. If you haven't gone to our website and signed up for the SOR Space Travelers Club yet, I'm telling you right now, it is time. $5 a month, we're going to give you a bunch of swag. We're going to get your name being able to post in private areas of our website, and so much more. We're going to give you a hell of a lot more than just access to our archives. While on our website, read up on my latest blog on orphan listeners that are out there. Check out Eric Markham's SOR Spacewire for your latest weird news, and if you've had a sighting you can't explain, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Our researcher, Mike Schmidt, is ready to take your call. We want to welcome in everyone listening in live in Las Vegas on Renegade Talk Radio. Yes, we are the nighttime show of Sin City. There are over 160 countries around the world listening on UPRN. Yes, the United Public Radio Network is also live on 107.7 FM in New Orleans. Thank you so much for tuning us in. And remember, if you're a listener on Revolution Radio, the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. The paranormal is one of those topics where many areas of Canada and the United States especially, there's still a weird taboo about this subject. People just don't feel comfortable talking publicly about ghosts and hauntings. Yet, you get them in private, and they go off like a firecracker on the 4th of July. Have you ever noticed that? It's amazing the stories you can hear in a private conversation. Many don't want to admit they believe. Yet on the other side of their mouths, they're telling you detail by detail of their intricate encounters with the strange. People like paranormal author Sam Baltrusis can tell you, and I can verify this, that it's the giggle that we get under our breaths that makes this whole situation kind of comical. Sam is a believer. He's big into the paranormal in Boston and has written several books on New England hauntings and mysteries. He's also putting on a Paracon in Provincetown, Mass. this spring. This May, where he's asked yours truly to break down a little bit of what the paranormal media should be all about, which, of course, I'm more than happy to do. I kind of like to talk. So to start off, we're going to get into the Provincetown Paracon, bring in Sam Baltrusis. Sam, it's been a while. How are you, my friend?
Hey, Dave. Good to hear you again.
Absolutely. You know, I only heard you about 3 hours ago, but that
I know, right?
wasn't publicly. That was more privately. You know what? It's great to have you on the air, my friend. Thank you so much for coming back on. And I do have to say, on behalf of everybody at Spaced Out Radio, thank you so much for inviting us to your Paracon in Provincetown, Massachusetts in May, my friend, because we're really looking forward to it. To be able to take Spaced Out Radio to the East Coast, man, is just truly a pleasure.
Well, Dave, I love your show, and I've been on your show twice before, and I believe it or not, you're the inspiration for the Provincetown Paracon. So it's kind of a long story, but you texted me about, like, we basically were talking about upcoming Paracons, and I was doing some research, the Paracons in New England, and it kind of occurred to me that every Paracon in New England was the same 10 people. And I'm like, I'd really love to do a Paracon that's not the same 10 people. And then I reached out to my friend Adam Berry, who is on Kindred Spirits, who was on Ghost Hunters, who lives in Provincetown. And I wrote a book on Provincetown called Paranormal Provincetown. And I said, how would a Paracon in Provincetown, would that go over? And he was like, absolutely. And he was like, yes, like with exclamation points. So you were kind of indirectly the inspiration for that. So I immediately asked you, and some of the crew's going to be there as well. So I'm very excited about it.
I'm very excited about it, too, because I've only done one other Paracon. That was in Washington State earlier this year with Forest Moon Paranormal in Concrete, Washington. And I had a blast, just meeting other presenters, meeting people in the same field. I'll tell you, way up where I am, man, it is a lonely, lonely spot. I mean, yes, there's a lot of people into the paranormal, and there's a lot of people who want to take part. And in fact, I'm starting this year at our local museum. I'll be hosting, Space Out Radio will be hosting a once-a-month paranormal jaunt around the museum that I will be hosting and going through all these buildings. So I'm kind of getting into it, kind of getting the whole community spirit into it and everything. But when you take it on the road, it is at such a different level, Sam. And I want to thank you for actually giving me some sort of indubious credit there for putting the idea in your head. I didn't mean to. I was just trying to figure out if there was anything out there that we could get the name on. But you're right. I got to tell you, man, you are right. Because when Everett Thiemer, one of my business associates behind the scenes of Spaced Out Radio, literally was looking at all these paracons. Every one you go to is the same people over and over again. And that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
But where's the freshness? You know, where's the produce when it's the same story over and over?
And I felt like the ones that I've been to, mainly throughout New England, it's, you know, it was not the people that go to the Paracons over and over again. They all know each other. It's like a clique. And to me, I'm about innovation. I'm sort of about new faces and new voices. And I really think, you know, it's very male dominated, the paranormal world. And I wanted to have, you know, a lot of people from all over New England, but also from Canada, which gives a different perspective, but also different disciplines as well. And also different genders. There's a lot of women representing at the Provincetown Paracon. So I wanted different types of people, different voices, and I think I achieved that. Our lineup is amazing.
I think so too. Why don't you go through a few of the speakers that are actually going to be there and give little briefings on each one?
Sure. And the main speaker, so it started off with Adam Berry. Adam Berry was the winner of the Ghost Hunters Academy, which was a show in the States. He won that, and then he went on to Ghost Hunters, which everyone knows Ghost Hunters. Unfortunately, Ghost Hunters ended last season, but he was a couple of seasons on Ghost Hunters. That's where he met his right hand, Amy Bruni, who has been a long-time investigator in the Boston area, and she was on Ghost Hunters before Adam, and they kind of hit it off. And after they left Ghost Hunters, they started their own show called Kindred Spirits, which is a huge up-and-coming show in America. And so they're the two featured people. And then I just signed on to Planet Weird. There's Dana and Greg Newkirk, and they do this traveling museum of the paranormal that's absolutely incredible. And they work a lot with Nick Groff, and they also work a lot with Amy as well and Adam on Kindred Spirits. So they're going to bring their paranormal museum to the Provincetown Paracon. And then we have so Stephanie Burke and Tim Weisberg. They do a show called Spooky South Coast, which is big in New England. They're going to be there as well. We have tons of other people as well, and you're going to be there.
Well, I'm at the bottom of the barrel of that list, you know, for now, you know, it's the self-deprecating Canadian in me. What can I say? You know, but you got a lot of great talent there in regards to the paranormal. And you know what? In the end, you have to bring in the names to bring in the people. I think we all get that. But why did you decide to really mix it up rather than going with the same 10, 15 people that seem to do the circuit every spring through fall?
Well, my background before, I've been a journalist for many years, but I also worked in television. So I was like, you know, if I was producing a paranormal themed TV show, who would I want on my show? And I kind of I gravitated towards those people. So it was about casting, really. I was casting a show, and you know, and it turned out to be this like really great cast that kind of came about. It started off with, you know, the first two was Adam and Amy from Kindred Spirits, and I looked at the people, in my opinion, that were sort of the newcomers, the new kids on the block when it comes to paranormal investigation. I was really looking for innovation. I was looking for also giving a different perspective. Like, the people that are coming have a different approach to paranormal investigating. It's more not a like the Ghost Adventures approach, which was like an alpha male aggressive approach to the ghost world, is not what I'm about. So I was looking for sort of like a different approach where the ghosts are respected, and it was more like a loving approach to to investigating, as opposed to an aggressive male psyche approach, like ghost hunting, as opposed to investigating.
And everybody has their own styles and their own ways of doing things. When you decide to sit down and say, okay, I want this type of speaker, that type of speaker, I want a cryptid guy, I want a ghost speaker, I want someone on UFOs, how do you go about setting that up for a lot of people who may be out there, Sam, wanting to do the exact same thing as you? You know, a lot of it's intuition.
I've always been good at, when I worked in television and good at casting. I've been good at picking the right people to do the job. When I did it's called Ghost Ship Harbor on the USS Salem this last season, I was, responsible for finding my staff. And so I went for the people with different approaches. People had the passion and the fire that I have for the paranormal, because if you don't have that passion, you're not going to last the whole season. So I just look for people with a passion and someone with a different perspective. And that's, it started from there. And then it kind of blossomed into like one person after another kind of presented themselves. So a lot of it was just word of mouth and people reaching out to me and really winning me over. Like the crypto guru, Ronald, he approached me and we started talking, and I just was really into what he was. I have no background whatsoever in cryptids, so it was really fascinating to talk to him about the cryptids. And now Provincetown has a history of cryptids, so I found that really fascinating.
Do you like the mix? Because usually when these paracons go on, it's strictly ghost hunting, or it's strictly UFOs, or strictly alien contact, or strictly Bigfoot. Yet you have a very nice mix of absolutely everything.
Yeah, that was important to me. Like, I think I wanted to do what has not been done before. I mean, because everything else is it's the same thing over and over again, and it is like the ones that I've gone to have been strictly ghost, and I don't see any innovation. It's more about para-unity, which I believe in that. I believe in para-unity, but para-unity also doesn't lend itself to raising the bar when it comes to investigation. So I'm more about like looking for innovation and looking for people with new perspectives and offering something different, whether it's in the cryptid world or ufology or in the paranormal world.
See, I'm a big cryptid fan too. And I got to say, I am more of a cryptid and a UFO guy than I am ghosts. But I find ghosts and haunted places very, very entertaining. I love listening to the stories. I love listening to the research and some of the brilliance these investigators, Sam, are doing with their investigations these days. And I really think, to be at top of the game, and right now that would be having your own television show. I mean, some may disagree with that, but let's face it, that's at the top of the game right now, top of the pile. Just like Coast to Coast, love it or hate it, that's still the top of the radio pile. And when you got those people who are pushing hard and being innovative with their ways, how do you think that helps the public learn by going to these paracons?
I think that, it gives people access to the people that they see on television. So whether we like it or not, you have to have the big names to bring in the people. To be able to make this work, we have to sell a certain amount of tickets. So the big names do bring in people. Adam and Amy have a huge fan base, but Dave, you have a fan base too, and so it's sort of bringing in all sorts of people. And hopefully, looking at the roster of people who are signing up, they're not just paranormal people. These are people who also are into cryptids and also into ufology. So the fact that we mixed up the lineup is actually paying off because we're getting all sorts of people. And these are people who want to be vendors, and we still have open slots for the vendor for the Saturday event and lecture series, which is what you're going to be a part of. And we have all sorts of people signing up to be vendors. And these are people who are specialized in cryptids, people who are psychics, people who are paranormal investigators. We have a lot of authors who are going to be there. So it's a really nice mix of all sorts of paranormal types.
Tell us about the Provincetown area. How old is it? Because I know the East Coast is, where the first settlers came in and started building the 13 colonies in the United States. Explain to us what Provincetown is all about.
So Provincetown is at the very tip of Cape Cod, so it's literally the tip of the world. And Provincetown is where the Pilgrims first landed before they came to Plymouth. So Provincetown is where it all started for America, really. And there was, of course, people who argue that there was the Native Americans. When it comes to the Pilgrims coming over, that's where they first came in and they actually stole corn from the Native Americans in Truro, which is the nearby city. So it has history going back to the 1600s. And a lot of people don't know that. They don't know the Pilgrims first came there. They don't know about how tough it was for the Pilgrims to that first winter. And and also it has a lot of history dating back to the 1600s, but it also has Revolutionary War history and has Civil War history. And it's a typical it's actually not typical. It's like the most non-typical, beautiful New England seaport town that I've ever seen. It's beautiful.
I do have to ask, for only safety precautions, being that, Boston there, and, I'm a Canucks fan, and, 2011 is still, very much under my nerves. And not only am I a Canucks fan, but I'm a New York Yankees fan too. Am I safe?
No.
Am I safe?
I would recommend not wearing, a Yankees hat. Provincetown, you can get away with a lot. We have a lot of New Yorkers who come into Provincetown, but when it comes to Boston, I would kind of hide your allegiance to various Canadian groups. So I would, or even the Yankees, specifically the Yankees. So be proud, but be proud in Provincetown, not necessarily in Boston.
Well, I guess that means I got to go get a new hat, because I travel.
Probably.
I travel everywhere with my Yankee cap. It's like my good luck charm.
No one will jump you. You'll just get a few dirty looks.
What if I just put some tape on there or something?
I think that you'll be fine. And I see it all the time, but I have seen people get heckled on the street, especially if there's an upcoming game or, so I have seen the heckling going on, but it's more dirty looks than it is anything.
All right. So I am actually going to, and I'm getting ribbed right now in the chat rooms about being a Canucks fan. So that hurts. That really hurts. Anyhow, the whole point being is, Sam, I'm absolutely elated that you invited me, and I'm really glad to be bringing in a couple members of the Spaced Out Radio team. And Eric Markham is going to join us from the SOR Spacewire. He's coming up from North Carolina. Everett Thiemer will be coming in from Chicago. And I got to tell you, what's exciting about it is, even though I work every night with these guys, and we've been on Skype and everything, I've never met them face to face. That's the beauty of the internet. So you're kind of bringing my core team together in Provincetown. So I'm very excited about that, man. I really am.
It's a magical place. It really is. It's when you go there, you feel like your batteries get recharged. So there's something about, I don't know if it's the land or it's just the magic of Provincetown, but there's something about it that's like a rejuvenating, healing place. And a lot of people, I've written 7 books on the paranormal, and they say that my book on Provincetown, even though it's not my bestseller, it's like the funnest read, or the people love that book who read it. So I think there's something magical about Provincetown, and you're going to find that this coming together with your group, with your crew, is going to be equally as magical. It's it's the perfect scene for that sort of thing.
How much fun is this, or how stressful is it to put an event like this together?
Well, when I first started, it was kind of like a glimmer. I'm like, oh, I would love to do a Paracon, and then the reality hit. I'm like, oh, I'm doing a Paracon. So it went from like, oh, I would love to do one, to actually doing one. I run several ghost tours. I also, I've done tons of events. I've done a pretty large scale. I worked on Ghost Ship Harbor and USS Salem, so I've done large scale events before, but not on this level. It's a whole other level of, I wouldn't call it stress, because I really enjoy it, but getting people, all on the same page. And, I'll tell you, this actually worked out very smoothly so far. And we have a couple of months to go, but I feel like that it was meant to be. Like, it's like one of those things that was meant to be, and it's kind of working itself out. And I haven't been stressed. It's actually been, the entire thing has been like amazing. Like, the journey has been amazing so far.
And I got to say this, Bill Cardwell has now posted a Toronto Maple Leafs photo in the SOR Space Travelers. That's driving me nuts right now. He's like, "Oh, Dave," and there it is right there. And I hate the Maple Leafs. Hate the Maple Leafs. Yeah, this whole hockey thing, I should have never got into that question because I knew Bill would fire that up. Anyhow, let's talk a little bit about what I'm going to be discussing. You've asked me to actually speak about the paranormal media. And there's a number of ways, Sam, that we can get into that. And one of the ways we're going to get into that is, about how to create it, because there are so many different shows out there for people to listen to. Some of them are very good. Others, well, let's just say that they should probably be listening. And I'm not saying that to sound cocky or anything, because I know up here we have things we could improve on, and we have things that we have to try and address on this show. No show is perfect. But on the flip side, it really is a good time for a lot of people who are thinking about getting into podcasting or live radio, even if it's live radio online, to actually sit back and maybe take some notes.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you've kind of mentioned before that you're really picky about the radio shows that you listen to, and I think that you're a perfect example of an engaged community. And I when I listen to your shows, when I'm in your the chat rooms, I love the questions that are asked. I love the engagement. I love the people show up night after night, and I think that in my opinion, that's how Art Bell was back in the day, and I think that you're kind of going in that direction, and I'm excited by it. I listen to all the shows. Well, not all the shows, but I listen to a few shows. And out of all of them, when I listen to your shows, I'm really satisfied after I listen to it, and I like the community. It's kind of fun to connect and chime in and to have that engagement that you have with Spaced Out Radio.
And it amazes me, and I get that comment a lot, Sam. But it amazes me how many shows out there don't acknowledge the audience. Because without the audience, you have no show.
Absolutely. And you are a perfect example of having that engagement. And of course, you can't do it by yourself. You have a team, and that team is really good at engaging and asking questions and fueling the debate. Whether, some of the topics I've seen you cover, I'm like, I cannot believe he's doing this. But yeah, I mean, like you've covered some really controversial topics, and you do it with people, like not leaving the chat room because it's so controversial. Like you've had people still engaged, even though they may or may not agree with what you're talking about.
Oh, trust me, we have had those who have said, "Dave, if you play that topic again or go anywhere near that topic, I'm done with you. Done. We have had that. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
It has been there, but it's one of those things where, you have to be able to really generate some excitement with the show. You really have to be able to bring that together. And that's what we're trying to do here, is we're trying to tell people about the do's and don'ts of the paranormal media. Because most people, Sam, as you know, you have a journalism background, I have a journalism background, but most of the people who are broadcasting or writing about the paranormal are doing it out of a love and a passion, and you cannot blame them for that. But there is a gift that goes behind doing what we do, whether it's authoring a book, whether it's writing paranormal journalism, whether it's broadcasting paranormal journalism on radio or YouTube channel or whatever that you have. So do you think that right now it's a really lost gift in this field?
To believe it or not, I actually got started. Like I was a journalist for, I would write the Halloween story about haunted locations in Boston or whatever city I was living in, and I started reading the books when I was doing that story that ultimately became my first book. I was reading all the books that were out there about haunted locations in Boston, and they were horrible. I mean, it was like literally the worst writing I've ever. It was just really poorly written stuff. And I feel like that the bar, by putting my work out there, I think that, the journalistic approach is not new necessarily, but it's something that needs more. You need more journalism in the paranormal world, because I feel like some of the the people that were writing these books for many years, they just didn't have any background whatsoever. So they weren't asking the right questions. They weren't critical thinkers. And you need critical thinking to be able to do what we do. And so I think the bar is slowly raising, but I think that, it was a very low bar when I first started. Not to say that I'm single-handedly raising the bar. I think it's a community effort, but I think people like you and people like me coming in and people that work with you are raising the bar, and people are starting to realize that this is, we need to ask the right questions, and if we want to have credibility, we have to put out work that is credible.
How do we get to that credibility, though, in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I basic journalism, like I strongly feel that there is a need for journalism in the paranormal world. So asking the right questions, I think, when we're wrong, admit that we're wrong, cite our sources, there's actually go out in the field and immerse yourself into the topic that you're writing about. And, there's a lot of things that you can do. And also, like learn from your mistakes. So if something doesn't work, then you say, hey, this didn't work, and talk about it. So a lot of it is transparency, I think.
So when people approach you then about paranormal journalism, what advice do you give them? Where do you want them to go with it?
I feel like journalism in general is in jeopardy. I think that I'm old school in my approach. So I went to journalism school, and I did research before the internet. So I know how to go to a library and actually look up stuff in a library. And that's something that people don't know how to do. They don't know how to go to a library and look up special collections and really dig for original source material, which is very, very important to what I do. I feel like that journalism as a craft is definitely in jeopardy. And I think that we need to revisit that. I mean, as we see in the States with what's going on politically, we need strong journalism right now. We really do. And I don't see it. I don't see it happening.
Well, I hope I can help by kind of walking everybody through what we do, where we've had a little bit of success around these parts in gaining everything and gaining the trust of our audience. So I'm looking forward to it. I'll be speaking at noon your time, that's Eastern time. The Crypto Guru, right, who's very popular on this show, Ronald Murphy, he'll be opening up everything at 9 a.m. Eastern time, which is 6 a.m. here on the West Coast. So you're killing me by making me go on at 9 a.m. my time, noon your time. Sounds so much better at your time than mine. I'm not going to lie. Yeah. But you know what? I hope that as many Spaced Out Radio listeners can actually get there and try and come on in, because I know Sam would love it for, trying to bring in the numbers, because let's face it, putting an event like this is stressful. I know I would love it personally, because I love meeting our fans. When I went down to Concrete, Washington at Forest Moon Paranormal, I could not believe how many Spaced Out Radio listeners were down there. People walking up to me, I love your show, man. I listen to it all the time. And I'm like, oh, cool. I had no idea people were listening. Like, it's still a little humbling, So I hope everybody can attend, because paranormal journalism is one of those topics that really needs to be addressed. And Sam, a lot on this show over the last number of months, especially around the election time, right, we were looking at, and the big story around the media since Donald Trump was elected president is fake news. And people do not trust the mainstream national media anymore. They may trust their homegrown media at their local radio or television station, but on a national scale, people aren't trusting it. So everybody switched over to the alternative. Well, now we have the alternative that is sensationalizing. We have the alternative that is now fear-mongering, using propaganda slang. Where do people turn for alternative media now?
Well, I mean, I think my world at the moment is very paranormal. So I'm getting my news from shows like your show. You can say the Huffington Post and things like that, but truthfully, I get my news from the internet now. I also, I dig. I'm a journalist as well. I'll still do stories outside of the paranormal world. So I tend to go for publications that are definitely not mainstream. I still read the New York Times. I still read some of the mainstream publications, but I tend to go for the smaller, lesser known publications that, like, I was an editor of it's called Spare Change News, which is our local homeless newspaper. And, we've had some amazing journalism. And I'm also, when I watch news, I do watch PBS, and I'm a strong PBS supporter. So I think that there is still good journalism out there. It's harder to find.
Well, you know what? We just have to keep on pressing. That's all we
Absolutely.
can do. That's all anybody can do is just keep on pressing, because if they don't, they're going to be the ones who are feeding off of this fear-mongering. I've actually, and it's gone so far at times where I've actually had to tell people in our chat room, no more fear-mongering, or I got to delete you. I have to boot you, because I won't have that around our audience. We don't need that.
Well, I mean, you and I both are friends on Facebook, and I'm really, it's big for me not to express my political views on Facebook or in a public forum, because I feel like, I'm a journalist. I'm still a journalist. I have to be as objective as possible. I do have my personal opinions, but I'm not going to put it publicly. My job is to be as objective as possible, but yet I still have, strong opinions, but I keep that personally. I don't do that publicly. And so I think, fear mongering is, and I think there is reason for us to, to be alarmed, but I don't think it's apocalyptic. I think that it's just that we have, this is the time for, like the liberal media, or like it's time for the left to rise up and to fight. And so I feel. I'm in a liberal bastion in Massachusetts, which is like the most liberal state in the United States. And so I'm in a bubble of liberal thinkers, but that's not what's happening throughout our country.
And, the same thing is up here. It's starting to get there, and
right.
whether you're liberal, you're conservative, you're a Democrat or a Republican, it really doesn't matter what it is. The fact is, journalism is supposed to be journalism. I used to work with a guy who was a lawyer, and he was a staunch Democrat. We had a conservative/liberal government up here, and off the air, he would absolutely rip to shreds the current government. But when he went on the air, he knew it was time to be professional and read the story. And sometimes he would go with his slant. Sometimes he would get a little dig in or something like that. And our news director would, I remember Jackie Donaldson's her name, she would literally, tell him during the break, smarten up. This isn't about you or your political beliefs. This is about reading the story. So if you can't do that, get out of the studio. And that's the way it's supposed to be. We're supposed to call things as journalists straight down the line. Do you think that we could ever, in the mainstream or alternative, get back to that, or is it a lost cause?
I mean, I think we're in the process of getting back to that. I think that the current climate is calling for that, and I see it. What I think we need to do is kind of get to our blue collar roots as journalists, and to actually go out and report. There's such in my opinion, it's such a, internet, like just do a Google search, approach to journalism, and it's all opinion and not fact. Go out and talk to people. And, you're doing that with your show. You're actually going out and talking to people, both, people that you may agree with or disagree with, but you're talking to people. And that's what the heart of journalism is to talk to people and not to do a Google search and dig deeper. And that's what I think that we're getting there. I think what's happening in the States is people are starting to wake up and realize that they need to dig a little deeper and not just rely on the surface. They have to dig beneath the surface.
Well, one of the things that I have noticed recently in regards to digging around for stories is how many of these clickbait stories are now online. They're everywhere. I mean, you can't get through anything. I mean, even Ric Flair, man, is doing it on his Facebook page. That disappoints me. The 16-time world champion of wrestling, now dabbling in clickbait just to get clicks. It's getting to the point where it's ridiculous. And when we focus, and I laugh, and it's true with Ric Flair, but I just bring that up as a funny example. But the poor public doesn't know where to turn. And instead of staying informed, they're saying, screw it. I'm out of here. I'm using the newspaper for my kitty litter box. I'm using the television. I'm not even turning on the television to the news. I'm not even going on the internet. And if I hear it on the radio, I'm tuning to a different station, or I'm going to satellite radio to listen to something else. Are we becoming, as a public, that fickle in regards to the media portion, or are we just fed up?
I think what's happening is I think it's an overload. There's so much stuff out there. It's hard to know where to go. And I think that you asked me earlier, where do you go for your news? I'm like, truthfully, I don't go to a specific source anymore. It's all over the place right now, and that's scary. That's scary that we don't have a place to go for our news that's reliable. I mean, I did say that I go to PBS, but truthfully, PBS can be boring, sometimes. So there's the entertainment factor coupled with the real news. So I feel like that we're in a transition, and I think that it's not the end of the world. Yes, the newspaper, which is my background's in print, so I miss the newspaper. It's sad for me to see magazines and newspapers falling, we're losing them. And so it's going strictly online. So I do think that it's changing. And I think that the way what's going on is there's no way to monetize it. So people like you and I who made a career out of journalism, we're not getting paid like we used to do, get paid for journalism. So we have to do other things and write books or do TV shows or do radio shows. And that still doesn't make any money. So I feel like there needs to be we have to revisit ultimately, I think that the cream will rise to the top, and content will always be king. But for right now, we have so much static, we don't know what to believe anymore.
Is that at the fault of the journalists, or the fact that we have too many stations, especially in the United States, leaning right or left?
Yeah, I think that there's just a lot of crap out there, and to be able to find this type of stuff that we really need to listen to or go to for as a news source is not there. Our newsrooms are getting cut, newspapers are getting cut. We don't have journalists who are paid. So talking about I was kind of alluding to the blue collar aspect of journalism. A lot of the journalists who were the people that I worshiped growing up, they don't exist anymore because we can't afford them. So journalism is a calling, and to me, it's a very important part of a democratic society. And I don't make a lot of money, and I'm still it's my calling is to be a journalist, and also to write about the paranormal too. But I think journalism is something that it's not an ivory tower job. It's a get dirty, get out in the field, and work your butt off to get the story.
And that's what we try and do around here as well, and I don't think a lot of people get that. We all want to have that independent control that we can have. For instance, what I have on this show, you have with your own writings. And, there's a lot of different angles that we are allowed to take because we are not haunted, pun on the word there, yeah. on the situation, but we are not haunted by a news director looking over our shoulder or a station manager or a station, suit. Which, unfortunately, the media, in my opinion, where the media changed was instead of hiring radio people or television people into those vice president and presidency positions, well, that became the job of lawyers and accountants. Destroyed everything. I'm sure that's what's happened down there as well, because it's definitely happened up here, And there just comes a time when you have to stick to your guns, isn't it? You have to stick to your guns in order to try and get that story out. Whether it's paranormal, whether it's mainstream, whether it's political, religious, or about the guy who's stealing bicycles down the street from your house.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, you kind of alluded to having like the news director and have, my past had editors. People don't have editors anymore. So there's not you were mentored into there were stages you had to go through to actually become a journalist, and you had to earn your wings. The kids don't have that. They don't have an editor working with them and mentoring them to get to the point where they're actually able to make their own judgment or sound judgment as someone who's been in the business for years. And so that's what I think we're missing, that mentorship. And I hope that as an instructor, I'm able to work with the new generation and get them inspired to be able to be critical thinkers, and also to love journalism and to be a journalist, to be trained in journalism like I was as well. So I think that there's a need for mentors and people like you and I who have worked in the business to work with the younger generation, hopefully give them the tools to be able to be the type of journalists that they need to be to keep the profession alive. I do think that we're in trouble.
So rounding it out to the paranormal media, let's talk about that for a few minutes, because there are a plethora of shows out there, whether it's on Strictly the Paranormal, UFOs, Psychic Connections, whatever it may be. It all falls under the banner of a paranormal tree. Right. A lot of people who get into this are doing it for the right reasons, Sam. They feel they have a message to get out. They feel they have a sense that they have that voice and that opinion that is really going to change the world, and good on them for that, because they're following what they feel they should do. But in your opinion, and I want you to keep Spaced Out Radio aside, because, I don't want any bias in here, because we're journalists, right? Okay. What makes a good paranormal show on radio compared to one that isn't so good?
I think it's the questions that are asked, and I think that even with television shows, for example, Kindred Spirits, I saw that when their first episode came out. I'm really big on, because I'm a paranormal researcher when it comes to like what I do in the paranormal. And Adam Berry went to the library and did tons of research to get the backstory on the haunted location. I was so happy when I saw that. So it's like doing the research, asking the right questions, knowing what you're talking about. I'm also big about immersion journalism, so actually going out in the field and doing what you talk about. And I'm sure it's very difficult for you to go out and go cryptid hunting or go UFO hunting out where you are. But it's important for me to be able to go out in the field and to do what I talk about. And I didn't at first. When I first started in the paranormal world, I was a researcher, so I would do all the research, but I didn't go on paranormal investigations, or I didn't go out in the field. And I do now. I think that's important to be able to talk about or write about it. You also have to immerse yourself in what you're writing about.
Do you think too many people try and stay focused on one topic for too long?
Yeah, that's kind of what we're not doing in the province on Paracom. We're not making it just paranormal, which is paranormal. Just ghosts, because ghosts is my specialty. I'm open to the cryptids and ufology, and people say that the next level, people start with ghosts, and then they kind of go to the cryptids, and then they go to UFOs. I think I'm going to always be ghosts. Like that's something that I've always been the ghost guy. So but I respect the other disciplines. I just think that, I think that there's room for all of us.
So when you've been a guest on many different radio shows, are there times out there when you were like, oh God, what did I get myself into?
Many times, yeah. Because I go on your show and you're very well versed, and then you go on to another show and they don't know the basics. And I'm like, okay, if you're going to do a radio, and I actually have said this on a radio show, that if you're going to do a radio show, like, you should know what a residual haunting is, or you should know like the basics. And they're doing a paranormal themed show. And I didn't want to, I actually re-listened to that show recently, and I did kind of sound jerky on it, but I didn't want to do it on air, but I was really blown away how little this person that was doing the show knew about the paranormal, and they were doing a paranormal themed show.
Got a question coming in Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. This comes from Canadian Joe, and he is asking, do paranormal journalists face scorn from mainstream journalists regarding the subject matter?
Yeah, you and I have talked about this in the past. I mean, I was terrified to go into the paranormal world with my background. I mean, I've written for, I was a New York Times, Newsweek. I had pretty high profile journalism resume before coming into the paranormal. So I was worried about it, and I still get a snicker here and there, to be honest with you. But I think that the climate's changing. I think people are a lot more open-minded to it, and a lot of it has to do with pop culture, and I think shows like Ghost Hunters and even Ghost Adventures have opened doors for people regarding the paranormal. When I tell people that my books are history books with ghost stories, they tend to be more receptive to it. So I think that I was worried initially about the credibility, but it turns out that truthfully, I think people respect me more because I'm actually covering a topic that they're really interested in, and I do it, I think, as objectively as possible. So I was worried, but it was unfounded.
The reason why I think that's an important question is because there's a lot of people, and I know firsthand, when I had a UFO experience, I called my old newsroom out, and I talked to a good friend of mine, John. And I'm like, dude, has there been any reports of anything strange over my town? And he's like, no, what? And I told him what I had seen, and he was like, how much you been drinking tonight, Davey? And I'm like, nothing. You know I don't drink. Well, what are you smoking then? And it's like, immediately there is that what's the word I'm looking for? There's that mundane attitude. Yeah, that mundane attitude, that look of concern, that look of are you on something, that the mainstream just doesn't take this type of information seriously, much like scientists don't take cryptid hunters very seriously. And there's some very brilliant men in the crypto field who have scientific degrees who are basically shunned from the field as well. Do you think that's just a mainstream problem, that they are shunning everybody on the journalism side around these topics, or do you think that they are just way too into themselves and their own broadcasting careers to think that the low man on the totem pole shouldn't get any airtime?
I think that they're just afraid. I think that maybe that they've had a paranormal experience and they're just terrified. So they're shutting us away. I mean, I think if you look, I was on a TV show, local TV show, and the guy was obviously freaked out by the topic. And I definitely come across, he's a very well-respected journalist. I prefer doing radio TV shows where people have some prior experience with the paranormal. I've been on countless radio shows where they're like the mainstream radio shows. They have no experience whatsoever with the paranormal. But what's interesting is when I'm on their show, it's like the biggest hit of the season. So they get that people love this, but I also felt like it didn't feel like an interview. It felt like an interrogation. If they were like looking into my mental health, and I'm like, have you read my books? Because if you read my books, you would see that it's not like my books are they're history books, and they're not. I do have some books that are based on my personal experiences, but I do think that a lot of people that like the gentleman I was talking about, that was sort of the local journalist who kind of was freaked out by the topic. His wife loves the paranormal, and I gave him a copy of my book to give to his wife, and his wife loved the book. So I don't know. I mean, I think that we're going to have people that are kind of like, they raise their eyebrow toward us, and I don't care. I really don't care. I do this. I love it, and if they have a problem with it, oh well.
As an author, though, with all of these self-publishing online programs that you can get and then just stick it right on Amazon, how has that affected what you do writing about the paranormal, where, I mean, there's just as many authors these days as there are radio shows?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, like I said earlier, when I came in the business, there were only a few books based on Boston and Salem, the New England area, about the paranormal. So it was very limited when I first came in. There's one there's so many now. So I think that the climate's changing. I have a publisher. I work with publishers, but I also had tried self-publishing as well. And I think that it's okay. I think the cream will rise to the top. Content is king. I think if it's a good book, it will ultimately, the bad stuff gets kicked to the curb. So I'm not worried about it. And I think it goes the same with radio. I have always been trained that, there's going to be competitors, but as long as you focus on your content and make it the best content possible, then people will read it and support it.
I know someone like the crypto guru Ronald Murphy. He just got picked up by a major publisher that's worldwide, but I mean, he had to work hard for that. And do you think there's a lot of authors, whether it's yourself or other authors out there that that are just getting, raked over the coals, writing some very quality work, but just not getting that opportunity because of self-publishing, really pushing the area into oversaturation?
Well, a good example is Joni Mahan. She self-publishes, and she actually does very well with self-publishing. And, I've self-published a few books, and I started off with a publisher, so I kind of went backwards with it. And, truthfully, I prefer doing it on my own. Like, I think that you make more money and you just have more creative control. When you work with a publisher, you have to deal with what the publisher tells you. So, for example, my first book, I wanted to call it something completely different. They changed my title. It was like, my first book was called Ghosts to Boston, and I wanted it to be Boston Haunts or something. I forget what I wanted exactly, but I wanted it to be a different title. I wanted the cover to look a certain way, and they kind of said, "This is what we're going to do." And it doesn't become your work anymore; it becomes their work. And so I see the pros and cons of working with a publisher and self-publishing. So with Ron, congratulations to him to get the big publisher, because it does. Really for me, I had the platform, the name already before I joined the History Press as a writer. So they thought that I was definitely worthwhile. But I'm working with a new publisher on a new book, and they're a big publisher, and I have to write the book before they're going to greenlight it. So I still have to, even after 7 books, I still have to kind of go through the process.
It is a tough and brutal process indeed. I'm glad I haven't gone there yet, bud. I'm glad I haven't gone there. And I know there's a book in the making. I just haven't gone down that road. We're into our final minute here on Spaced Out Radio before we're going to hook out or step out for our first break of the night. When we come back, we're going to learn more about the paranormal and true crime and a lot of what Sam loves to write about. Sure, why not? Let's talk some ghosts. We're here anyways, and it's a Friday night. And you're all home alone with me and Sam. Talk to you right after the break.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
Looking for news beyond the mainstream news? Head to spacedoutradio.com and check out the SOR Spacewire. This is Spaced Out Radio's Eric Markham, News Director for the SOR Spacewire. Daily, I will bring you intriguing stories and outlandish reports from what's going on around the world. UFO sightings, paranormal activity, conspiracies, alternative health, and so much more. And if you have news, email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Had a run-in with ghosts, maybe Bigfoot, or seen lights in the sky? Hi, I'm Mike Schmidt from the SOR Sightlines. I'm here to investigate your sighting. Head to spacedoutradio.com and fill out a report on the sight lines. All your information is 100% confidential, and I will help you figure out what you've been seeing. File your report, and let's find out the answers together.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Have you got your Cosmic Passport? If you need one, tune in to Cosmic Passport on Spaced Out Weekend. This is Elizabeth Anglin, ET experiencer, spirit medium, and host of Cosmic Passport. Each weekend I'll be bringing you interviews and support from other paranormal experiencers, and the best in intuitive spiritual guidance from across the globe. It's all happening starting at 9 p.m. Pacific Time, midnight Eastern, on spacedoutradio.com.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest. From Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Oh, there's only one way to rock. Loud and proud. In high definition. Radio 702 rocks. Las Vegas.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up, enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio Live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Hour number 2 of Space Out Radio is underway. Good to have you along for the ride. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're on the United Public Radio Network live on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world, thank you for checking us out. We are live in Sin City, yes, down in Las Vegas, Nevada on Renegade Talk Radio. Good to have you with us. And, of course, we are on Revolution Radio, Studio B, reminding you that the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set a beauty of a password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. I got to admit, I'm a little intimidated by this one. Koyo-oxygy. Koyo-oxygy? Is that it? I have no idea. All I know is that's one hell of a score in Scrabble. So make sure you use the password correctly if you are an SOR Space Travelers member. Bill sets a password each and every night on this show. Tomorrow night and Sunday, Uncle Jimbo, James Tyson, and Elizabeth Anglin will be in the captain's chairs for Spaced Out Weekend. I will be leaving the cabin, sauntering through the snow, which is about 3 feet high right now, and going to find my Zen and my Chi, but I will not forget to look for a Wi-Fi signal to catch Spaced Out Weekend this weekend, so make sure you check it out as well, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. If you want to follow us on social media, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio on Twitter. Also use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio in case you want to connect with us live as well during the show. You can give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes. And, of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com. Tonight we have paranormal author Sam Baltrusis with us. Sam's a hell of a guy. He's a great author. I highly suggest you go find his books. Well worth the read. Sam, welcome back.
Hey, Dave. How's it going?
I'm good, man. Thanks for joining us. I really appreciate that. You know,
I like I said, I love your show, so it's kind of fun to be back on the show.
Absolutely. You know, we got to get you and Joni on at the same time. Maybe this summer we got to do that.
Yes, she and I actually are going to do, speaking of Paracons, where she and I are doing the Salem Paracon or Salem Con. And basically, Salem is my biggest, I do tours there, and it's my home haunt. So Joni and I will be there. Not as speakers. We're just going to have a little table selling our books, but we're going to be there. So we will be together soon.
Well, make sure you say hello to her from us.
I will. Absolutely.
I got a question from Gail in the SOR Space Travelers Club. She is asking, before spending time listening, watching, or reading, people want to know there is a point or purpose. Would you please tell us, Sam, what makes it worth our while as listeners or viewers versus just another poser telling us there are ghosts among us?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, I think that you earn that credibility, but I also think that coming from my journalism background, I brought those people into my world. So, you know, for me specifically, I had people that knew my work and they kind of followed me there. Some of them didn't. But so, yeah, when you have, there's so much stuff out there, we don't know where to go. And I think that, again, good content ultimately, you know, for example, like you can have a bad night or you can write a bad book and someone could base you on that base, not read the rest of your books based on that one book. So it's important as people that put out the content to put out a good radio show or put out a good book. But the consumer, it's up to them. You know, like they may or may not like it. I have pretty high reviews on Amazon, but I have that one or two reviews that are like the worst book ever. I actually had someone say that on one of my books, and that was heartbreaking because I spent so much time and energy on that book. And so not everyone's going to like you.
That is the tough part. That is the tough part, is the criticism. Because what a lot of people do is they only see the outcome. It's like people who listen to this show. They only see the outcome, which is the nightly broadcast. They don't see the hard work that goes on behind the scenes trying to figure out, okay, do I have enough women speaking this month? Do I have too many Bigfoot topics or UFO topics? Am I talking enough ghostly topics? They don't see that part of the stress that it actually is behind the scenes, whether you're writing or creating a radio show.
Right. And it's heartbreaking when you have like 25-star reviews and you have one star review, and you know that person didn't read your book. You know, they may have just read the introduction, they didn't like the introduction, or like one word you use in the introduction. So people are going to judge. They're going to judge it on the cover, and they're not going to judge it on the substance or the amount of time and effort you put into it. To write a book, it's a lot of energy, and especially to write a book on the level that I write my books. And it goes with, you know, what you do with radio as well, or do with television. There's a lot of stuff that you have to do to do the level of content that I do and that you do.
Absolutely. And when it comes to the paranormal, let's take a step back here for a few minutes here and start transitioning into the whole paranormal side of everything. What got you into this field?
Again, so I was in journalism. I was writing stories for magazines. I was a freelance journalist. So I worked in New York City for about 10 years. I moved back to Boston in 2007, and I worked for a local TV station, and my hours were like 4 in the morning until 11 o'clock. And it was just like the red eye shift. And I just hated it. I just hated working in the newsroom at that time. And I started freelancing, and I loved it. And I started writing for a magazine called Stuff Magazine. And I wrote a story about haunted hotspots in Boston, and the response was phenomenal. And that turned into my first book deal. So, I've always had an interest in the paranormal. I've always been sensitive to the paranormal, but I didn't make a career out of it. So that first book was just kind of the people spoke and they wanted more, and I got a book deal from it. So it started from me doing what I normally do as a journalist, and it just kind of led to the books organically.
Do you find with the paranormal that there's a lot of similar stories out there that you were noticing, or do you find that everything is quite different?
There's definitely recurring motifs, and you see, the Native American backstory, or the wailing woman, or there's a lot of similar stories, like archetypes that are throughout ghost lore. And even with the books, I write for the History Press, and our books are structured very similarly. Like they're you start off with the history of a location, and then you go into the ghost lore, and that's how our books are written. Not all of them are written well, but that's how we structure it. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely there's a certain way we do things. I try to do things a little differently. So I structure my stuff, I think, in a unique way. People respond to that.
When you are writing, what type of stories do you like to write about?
Getting to the motifs, like I do notice recurring motifs, and I would love to do a book that goes into those recurring motifs. And I like to do, the 13 Most Haunted series is based on my personal experience. And my first 3 books, which are my big ones, the ones that really sold well, were more history books, and they were labeled as local history, and they still do really well in the local history department. I like to write my personal experiences, and that means actually going out in the field and having personal experiences. But that's a little scary as an author, because you're putting yourself out there, and people, I've done tons of book signings, I've done radio shows and TV shows, and in those environments, people always want to know, well, what about your experiences? What about your experiences? And, I started writing those books, and people are responding to it. They want to know, my personal experience. So I think I like to write just based on my perspective.
Do you think the personal experience is still worthy of writing about? And the reason why I ask that is because we see a lot of researchers out there today, Sam, who they want to hear your story. They want to hear my story or any experiencer's story. But in the next sentence, they're saying it isn't really relevant to the research that we're conducting because we're so far advanced from the personal experience, whether it's about disclosure, whether it's about life after death, whether it's about, the alien phenomena and contact. We just seem to be stepping away from the experiencer. Is that still an important topic out there? And if it isn't, should it be?
Yeah, I mean, I think absolutely should be. I think that that is my formula. I approach my books like a journalist, so it's important to me to have firsthand encounters in my books. And so I talk to hundreds of people about their personal experiences. But I also dig for why a place would be haunted. So I'll talk to 100 people, and they have the same recurring thing. Like they'll I got touched on my back in the bowels of the USS Salem. Why would that happen? Well, maybe because there was, there in 1953 there was an earthquake and hundreds of people were brought on board and they were kept in the room where these people were tapped on the shoulder. So yeah, I mean, I think part of my approach to writing these books is about talking to people who have the experiences, and I think firsthand experiences are really important. My first book, to be honest with you, I wanted to have more firsthand experiences in my books, and my publisher said, we want lots of that. We want more historical backstory, and we want more archival photos, which I love, but I prefer having, I prefer to talk to people, and I prefer interviewing people.
I still love the personal story. And I'm saddened by the way, Sam, that a lot of researchers and writers have kind of stepped away from it, because in the end, it's like watching a first-person movie. I'm right into it when it happens. And I think about the movies Paranormal Activity, whether you liked it or not, Blair Witch Project, movies like that were your first person right in the middle of the scene, seeing what is actually happening. And I feel that way when we get deep into the experience of someone who is actually out there having these anomalies happen to them. When you're writing about those type of first-person experiences, how frank or how general do you have to be when writing those?
Well, I'm actually working on a book that's based on my personal experience on the U.S. of Salem. So, it's my personal experience coupled with 20 other people. So it's important to have multiple sources to corroborate what's going on. So that having the multiple sources at the same location is really important. Things have been skewed over time. Like Amityville Horror, was that true? That's one. There was so many people that were part of that, but was it based on fact? We've been kind of bamboozled. So when it comes to the first person account, so maybe people are wary of believing it. And the whole, the fact versus fiction. Truthfully, what really happens at these locations may not make for a good, like a big budget Hollywood movie. But if you tweak it a little bit and add some fantasy into it, then yeah, it'll be great. So I think it's important for someone like me to be able to, to actually if I'm going to write about first person experiences, to actually base it on reality and base it on this person's perceived, recounting what really happened. And based on my experience on the U.S. of Salem, it's definitely book worthy. I mean, what really happened was insane. And, it'll make a great book. It just having everybody on the same page, because the people had different experiences who were with me. So getting those different perspectives has been a challenge, but I think that it's necessary to make a good book.
Mm-hmm. When you're choosing the topic, whether it's paranormal, and I know that's your forte, do you look for the more popular places that are being haunted, or do you believe that you try and get as personal as possible? Maybe give us an example of that.
Well, the perfect example is the Lizzie Borden house. I mean, my 13 Most Haunted in Massachusetts, it's basically ranked on what I think is the most haunted. And of course, the list is subjective. It's not, there's no rhyme or reason. I make a location the most haunted based on input from my fellow authors and paranormal researchers and people that are investigators around the field who had experiences. So 13 Most Haunted in Massachusetts, I made the S.K. Pierce Victorian Mansion in Gardner, Mass. #1 on my list. And that was very controversial because the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast in Fall River is the most notorious. And in fact, some people say it's the most haunted location in America. I don't think it is. I think that the legend is definitely makes it the most haunted. So I put it 3 on my list. And then I wrote another book, 13 Most Haunted Crime Scenes Beyond Boston, kind of satisfy the Lizzie lovers out there, the ones who love Lizzie Borden. And that was #1 on the most haunted crime scenes beyond Boston, which is my most recent book. And so, yeah, I mean, I definitely have gone for the location that was the most popular, but I also think that it's important for me to be true to myself. Yeah, the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast in Fall River is so interesting. And I think it is very haunted, and it's definitely the most haunted crime scene in Massachusetts, but is it the most haunted location in Massachusetts? I don't think so.
I got a question from Canadian Joe at Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio, and he is asking, aren't a lot of experiencers reluctant about coming forward with their story? Have you noticed this, Sam?
Absolutely, and you and I were talking about that earlier. New England is notoriously tight-lipped about their ghostly encounters, and getting them to go on the record is like having them, give up their first child. They don't want to go on the record. But they do tell you off the record, and they go into explicit detail. And they always say before they tell me their stories, I've never experienced anything like this ever before. And like, I normally don't believe in ghosts, but a full-bodied apparition appeared to me in a bed and breakfast in Fall River. And they'll tell me this like crazy story, but they don't believe. And I'm like, okay, you saw a full-bodied apparition sitting on the corner of your bed, but you don't believe in ghosts. Okay. But that happens all the time. I do think that it's puritanical. I think that it's sort of, we are trained in New England not to talk about ghost lore because you'll be perceived as crazy. And it could be, this is New England. This is where the Salem witch trials happened in 1692. A lot of the evidence that was used in the witch trials was paranormal. I mean, it was like apparitions of women appearing to them. So there's a backstory as to why New England is notoriously tight-lipped about their ghost stories.
How haunted is New England?
It's extremely haunted. Salem is, it's as haunted as you think it would be. There's a lot of residual energy there. Boston is haunted. Provincetown is extremely haunted. So I think that it's because of the history, I think that it does translate to more ghosts. Is it more haunted than other parts of the world? I don't know. I mean, I've been to other parts of the country, and I think obviously like the UK and probably even Canada, there's a lot more history. So I think it's about history, and I think that you need to have that history to have the hauntings. But there's a lot happening in New England, and this is where the birth of the revolution. This is where there was it's going to leave a psychic scar on a location, in New England. There was a lot that's happened over the 300-year period.
Joyce is asking if you've ever heard of Villisca.
What is that? Is that
I have no idea. I have no idea. Well, I'll get her.
Villisca.
Yeah, Villisca with a V.
Okay.
I'll get her to, Joyce, if you're listening in, which I know you are, make sure you give a little bit deeper of an explanation on that, and I'll pass that on to Sam as well. Everett is making an interesting comment here. He says, I'm tired of the locations that have been done to death, pun kind of intended. I want to hear about undiscovered locations. Is there a lot of undiscovered locations still left in the Massachusetts area?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to one in May. Provincetown, this is the first book written on Provincetown. So, yeah, I mean, I agree with him on that. The 13 Most Haunted book, a lot of the locations in that book, they were done to death, like pun intended. But Provincetown is a perfect example. Like, it was so hard to do that book because there was nothing written before that. And so that Provincetown is a perfect example of an untapped, uninvestigated location.
Tell us about some of the ghosts of Provincetown.
There's tons of stories in Provincetown. Again, it has history that people don't realize. That's where the Pilgrims initially landed. There is a creative vibe to it. There's a long history of artists. It's an artist colony. Literally the tip of Cape Cod. As far as the ghost lore, there's a lot of eccentricity there because there was a lot of crazy there, and there was also a lot of like gangster. That's where the gangsters would vacation. So there was a lot of like an underbelly going on in Provincetown for many years. That's still, the murders and like the Lady of the Dunes, for example. She was a woman that was executed, and she was severely mutilated and left on the beach, and we don't know her name. And the Lady of the Dunes case has been a cold case for many years. There's been potential ties to Whitey Bulger, but we still can't confirm that. But, like my goal with the Provincetown Paracon is to revisit that case and to maybe find some something, maybe approach it with a paranormal lens and maybe find out some more information. We have one of the leading experts on that case, Sandra Lee, who has written a book about it, and she's also writing a book about the Krista Worthington case. And you know, I'm the local expert on Tony Chop Chop Costa, who was a serial killer in Provincetown. So even though it's a beautiful place, there's been a lot of murder there, and the ghosts reflect that.
Oh, you got to tell me about a name like Tony Chop Chop Costa.
Yeah, Tony Chop Chop Costa was a serial killer. He lived in Provincetown in the Victoria House, which was a flop house, and now it's a bed and breakfast in Provincetown. And I think it's actually this season it's going to be closed, but I'm not sure. I'm trying to get us in there. But Tony Chop Chop Costa was living in what today is the Victoria House, and he would lure his victims. He would the two girls that he killed were they also were staying at the Victoria House as well, and they met, and then he drove them out to Truro, and then he did horrible things to them. They called it the secret garden. He buried them. He just took out their hearts. Just horrific things. Think about the worst serial killer movie like Silence of the Lambs. That's what he did to this woman. And I feel an attachment, like writing about crime scenes and about these women. It's important for me to not to sensationalize the killer, but to sensationalize the women who were killed, and to give them a voice. And I feel like with Tony Chop Chop Costa, what he did to those women, we talk about him, but we don't talk about the victims and the people they left behind, the loved ones that they left behind. And I feel like that's what I want to do. I want to talk about the women who, I fell on the story accidentally, and I think it was a ghost. I mean, I was staying in the Victoria House, which is in Provincetown, and I didn't know that's where a serial killer once lived. And I heard a screaming from the closet, and I opened it up, and I thought maybe it was from outside, but there was nobody there, and it was off season. And it turns out the room that I was staying in was actually the room that Tony Chop Chop Costa stayed in. And perhaps there's potential evidence that he kept the women in the closet that I heard the screams coming from. So, and he did meet the women in that hotel. But what's interesting about that story is no one wrote about it. It was not, like, no one knew about that story. I had to dig deep for that story.
A guy like him, how many victims did he have?
Well, I mean, there's the two that there was three at least, but there was probably many more. But we know that he was charged for three. He luckily was caught before he can commit more murders, but we know three for sure.
That has to be weird, being in a home where a serial killer was. What does that feel like from a human level on this side? As
someone who is sensitive to the paranormal, I get calls to those places. So I don't think it was a coincidence that I ended up there. At the time, I couldn't figure out why I was supposed to be there. In fact, like I was doing a story. This is before I started writing books, to be honest with you. And I was doing a story, and they were like, well, there's only one place that's available, and it's the Victoria House. It's a bit of a dump, but that's the only room that's available for that weekend. And, and I'm like, okay, I can, not a problem. And then I was put in there, and then I had this emotional connection. So I didn't know it was a crime scene. I didn't know that going in, but you can just feel it. And I knew something was up, and it took me about 3 years to really dig to what really happened there and why it felt so uneasy.
Do you like dealing with the history of long-time old serial killers?
No, I don't. I mean, it's something that I feel like I because of my journalism experience, I think I'm able to do it and to do it well. I think of people that just scratch the surface and just do kind of like what he was alluding to earlier, like the history and then the ghost stories. Like that's so easy to do. What's hard to do is to find what really happened. And like you're not going to find the Tony Chop Chop's ghost story anywhere but my book because no one's written about it before.
I know around here, from the 80s right into the 2000s, there's been a couple of serial killers that have been in British Columbia. There's one that we all know is still active up north of where I am, what they call the Highway of Tears. And a lot of people say it's taboo to investigate those areas where serial killers have claimed their victims. A lot of people will say, well, this is where we might be able to find the answers to the mystery of what went on and how these people passed away, to give them a voice from the other side. What is your opinion in dealing with crime scenes like Chop Chop, or the Highway of Tears killer, or say someone like Ted Bundy's victims, along those lines?
I think it's a necessary evil. I think that by doing what we're doing, Lady of the Dunes case, for example, it's never been solved. We don't even have her name. We don't know what her name is. And, I feel like if people approach it with a paranormal lens, then maybe we can find her name. So why not bring in a psychic? Why not bring in a sensitive to the paranormal? Why not do EVP sessions there to find out information? And I want to believe in my heart that the victims are not ghosts, or they're not bound there. But if my theory is true, I strongly believe in the stone tape theory that energy is left at a location. So if a murder happened at a location, there's going to be psychic clues left at a location. And I still haven't been. I don't feel like that. I believe in the stone tape theory, but I don't want to believe that a victim is left at a location and is bound there. I want to believe that they're in heaven.
I want to believe that too. But for the family that is still surviving, give you an example, we had a serial killer in Vancouver named Robert Willie Picton, who killed something like 63 women from Vancouver's downtown east side. And the story is absolutely horrific if you've never heard about it, because literally he owned a pig farm about 30 miles out of town. And what he would do is he would get the girls drugged up, take them back to his house, have his way with them, murder them, put their bodies through a wood chipper, and then feed them to the pigs.
It's horrible.
It's disgusting that any human being could actually do that. And when you look at something like that, okay, obviously the entire area, for us who are in the paranormal, we're going to know right off the bat that place is haunted. There's 60-some deceased people there. But their family members are still alive.
Right.
Is there a time limit? And another case that I'm thinking about, more so popular in the United States, the Jeffrey Dahmer killings. Okay, do we look at those situations and say, we should leave that off topic? Because I know a lot of people recently, over the last year, I've seen have been investigating Jeffrey Dahmer's houses.
Right. And I personally think that there is a time limit. I think that it's like 50 years that I generally do. However, the Lady of the Dunes case, for example, that is coming up on 50 years. But the thing is, the killer, what if we know that Jeffrey Dahmer committed those heinous crimes? Why do we want to re-traumatize ourselves with that? But when a case is a cold case and we don't know what happened, I think that's when you do revisit the crime scene and hopefully try to find answers.
Is it healthy, though, for the public?
Well, I think there's a morbid fascination with serial killers, and I think that it taps into something that the deepest, darkest, I have friends who are like the sweetest ladies who are really fascinated with serial killers. I personally am not, but I do think it's important to understand how they think. And I think that, if I do write about crime, I think that there is a fascination with crime stories, and obviously I'm doing these books because of that. And I am fascinated with, I'm fascinated with whether or not that a crime would leave a psychic scar in a location. So that part interests me, but the actual crime is hard to write about. It's very difficult.
I don't know. I think there's just certain topics that should be taboo for a while. You know, I could see 50, 70 years down the road, maybe 100 years down the road, investigating that. You know, but there just comes a time where I think, you know, you have to show some sensitivity to the family. And unfortunately, a lot of people in the paranormal don't have that sensitivity, if you know what I'm talking about.
Well, I mean, but keeping, you know, with, for example, the Tony Chop Costa murders, that was definitely, it would have been the talk of the town or talk of the nation, because it was in the 60s, the late 60s. But then Charles Manson happened, and then all attention went to Charles Manson. So, you know, people have always been fascinated. Like, in fact, like that, the Secret Garden in Truro was the most visited tourist attraction in the area in 1970. So, definitely people have a morbid fascination with this stuff, and they want to see where the bodies were buried. But I also think that the story was overlooked because of Charles Manson. So I didn't know that I was staying in a place that a murderer lives. You know, I didn't know that, and like I would have liked to know that before I actually stayed there. It was like, so I guess you know. I'm torn. I feel like let him rest in peace, let the families rest in peace. But I also think that I want to know that I'm staying in a hotel where a murderer once lived. Like that's something that I think that's kind of, for me, I want to know as a consumer.
Well, I guess we can put it in the fact that there's going to be a lot of paranormal teams out there who want to be the first to try and grab something because, you know, in their way, they think they are giving a hand, and it's going to cause this whole uproar. And you talked earlier the first hour about paranormal unity on what is right and what is wrong in the field. Do you see where it goes to kind of down that road as we kind of spin this, Sam, into the whole paranormal unity talk? Do you see where it kind of goes down that road where you have people out there, they want to be the first, they want to get out there and help. Maybe they're going to get an answer from the other side as to what happened, and the rest of the paranormal team saying, geez, you know, we're trying to be taken seriously here, you're not helping.
Yeah, I mean, I'm apprehensive sometimes to write about certain locations because of that. 13 West Haunted in Massachusetts features locations that everybody has, that's heavily investigated. But I like to go to locations that have not been heavily investigated. But I have seen what happens is when you open up those can of worms. Well, I mean, we've seen with The Conjuring, like where The Conjuring house took place, there's a woman that currently lives there, and she's traumatized by the amount of out to her home and have, you know, invaded her privacy and have been investigated on the property. The people feel like that location is their location, but in fact, it's a private home. So we as people who write about the paranormal, people who are investigators, have to respect people's privacy. So yeah, I am a little apprehensive to go up on the record with certain stories because of that, like the Victoria House. I mean, like they you know, not everybody is on the same page when it comes to wanting their story to be told. Like maybe they don't want people to know that a murderer once stayed at this bed and breakfast. But generally, it really depends. Some people, New England is notorious about not wanting to be known that that's where certain things happen. But other locations, like the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast, that's how they make their money, is from investigation. So certain locations embrace it. Other locations don't want to have anything to do with it.
It still comes back to the fact, Sam, that, you know, a lot of paranormal teams out there tend to try and take advantage of that. I think it at times gives the paranormal a black eye. It gives the whole industry a black eye. Is there a silver lining around how we can get around this to kind of make both sides happy, to respect the whole aspect of the investigation that the paranormal wants to do, but to respect the family and the friends as well who are suffering from the lost one?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, well, in Massachusetts, for example, there are certain locations that embrace that, like embrace the investigation, like the Houghton Mansion in North Adams, like the S.K. Pierce Victorian Mansion in Gardner, like the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast. I think that those locations are heavily investigated. My theory is that because they're so heavily investigated, like people bring their own crap to the location, as in their own negative energy or their own expectations, and it makes them more haunted. So it exacerbates the hauntings. I tend to shy away from locations that are private locations that shouldn't be talked about. So I've always been open about the locations, like Provincetown. Like most of those locations have not been written about in the paranormal sense. So it's not common knowledge. But kind of what the gentleman Joe asked earlier about, like I like locations that have never been written about. It's a catch-22. I mean, like if we write about those locations and then all the investigators go there, is that a good thing? Like, is that a good thing to open up that can of worms at the location that has not been investigated? Because it's going to become the next hot spot. We see trends in paranormal investigating, like certain locations are the hot location of the season, like the S.K. Pierce Victorian Mansion. It was on Ghost Adventures, and now everyone wants to investigate there. And we saw that with Houghton Mansion in North Adams, and we've seen that definitely with the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast, and we're going to see it with the USS Salem. It's just going to happen. And the USS Salem is very haunted, and in my opinion, it's not to the point where it's been overly investigated, and it's extremely, extremely haunted. So I don't know. I'm going to find that out firsthand.
You've been to the Lizzie Borden house.
Right.
You say it's very haunted. What's that like there for those of us who have only ever heard about the story?
Well, again, I haven't spent a lot of time. I have people who I have talked to have spent a lot of time there. And I think that like the Houghton Mansion and like other locations, these locations became active after they were on Ghost Adventures. I strongly believe that we're bringing our own crap to these locations and we're making them haunted. So yeah, I mean, like something like the Lizzie Borden murder is going to possibly leave a psychic imprint on the location, like her killing her parents. But why wouldn't say Maplecroft, which is where Lizzie Borden lived in the later years of her life? Why isn't that place haunted? And I'll tell you, that location is going to be the next hot location. When they open, they're actually turning that into a bed and breakfast, and it will be the next Lizzie Borden house, because I think it's haunted too. I haven't been able to go inside, but they're about to open it, and when they do, all hell's going to break loose.
What do you mean by all hell's going to break loose? That almost sounds eerily fun.
Yeah, well, it's going to be the hot location, and so getting back to the there's always especially in Massachusetts, there's specific locations that are going to be popular for that season for whatever reason. And for the last year or so, it was the S.K. Pierce Victorian Mansion, and the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast has been popular for many years. But people that investigated the Lizzie Borden house when it first opened up as a bed and breakfast say that the energy there it's a lot more active now than it was 10 years ago because of all the investigations. So getting back to my theory, people are bringing in their own crap. They're bringing their own stuff with them. And so Maplecroft, because of the Lizzie Borden backstory, people are going to want to come and investigate it, and the same scenario is going to happen again. So it's going to be a location that has not been investigated, but it will be if they open it up to investigators, and then it will be the hot location.
Do you think she did it? Do you think she committed the crime?
Yeah, I do. I think that's one of the stories that everyone's fascinated with, and I'm interested in it as well, because it's a whodunit. Like, did she really do it? And I think there's a book, and I forget the name of the book, but it just came out where they have it's new theories to the Lizzie Borden case, and I strongly feel that she proved that Lizzie Borden did in fact kill her parents.
With the energy that has gone in there, with so many people, from paranormal investigators to tourists alike, going in there, hearing the story, do you think an investigation place or a haunted place such as the Lizzie Borden house can be tainted by different energies?
That's what I've been saying the past hour. Yeah, I mean, I think that their energy is tainting the location. It's contaminating the location. And, you know, you see ghost adventures go into a location. I think strongly that the people, Zach is bringing in attachments with him. They're bringing their attachments. They're dropping off those stowaways at the location. And it could be Zach or it could be anybody in the paranormal world. We go in the most haunted locations in the country, we're going to have attachments. And sometimes they don't know what to do with those attachments, and they leave those attachments at the locations that we visit. Another theory is that the locations that we visit, like the Houghton Mansion or like the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast, are active because ghosts go where they get a lot of attention. That's another theory. I don't believe in that theory as much. I'm more into the stowaway theory. I think that people leave their own energy, their negative stuff at their location. It could be expectations. It could be their attachments. It could be whatever. But people do leave their junk at these haunted locations.
A couple of months ago, we did a story on Boston's missing men with blogger Elise Soper. And right. I know you tuned into that, and you had some very interesting thoughts on that. Tell us about Boston's missing men.
Well, so kind of give you some backstory with me. I take on odd jobs to put me in a location that will potentially turn into a book. So I currently have a job that has me on the Boston waterfront, and I am there to kind of keep an eye out on what happens. And this is the time of year. So it's been a recurring motif where these men, usually in their young 20s, they have a scientific background. Some of them do, some of them don't. These are kids that are up and comers. They're intelligent. They're white, usually middle upper class young men with a bright future who mysteriously end up in Boston Harbor. And it's in a short location. It's a small location, and it's also, you know, it's been attributed to the accident that they're out drinking and they accidentally fell into the harbor. But it's this general location that this happens, and it's happened many, many times. And I first became interested in the case with the Zach, I forget his last name, but there was a young gentleman who went missing 2 years ago, and I just knew it. I knew that there was something more to the story, and then I started looking into the whole that whole theory, and it was known as the smiley face killers, and but I think that Elise was talking a lot about the mystery of it, and it's every situation. It's very mysterious, and it doesn't make any sense. So it's something I'm looking into currently. Whether or not it's going to turn into an actual book, I don't know.
Do you think there is something paranormal that goes along with this? I mean, the easiest thing to say is to try and attach it to someone like the smiley face killers. But a lot of the video evidence that has been shot at the bars, along the streets of these people, it just seems like all of a sudden normal people go absolutely haywire. Like it's almost like they're short-circuiting in their brain. Have you noticed that too?
That's exactly. I mean, I just wrote a book called Haunted Boston Harbor, and the locations in that book are the locations that, you know, where these men have gone missing. I have noticed that as well, and I have my personal theories, but I'm not going to. I mean, my theory is that perhaps there is a paranormal answer to what's going on.
Why do you think it is a paranormal answer? Do you think these people, good, hard-working young men, because with, I believe, all the exception of one, they're all in their mid to late 20s, successful, college-educated, usually working on the business side, dressed up in nicer clothing, if not a suit. There seems to be weird patterns that go along with this before this weird situation happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they're being lured out to the harbor. As we've seen with the video footage, it doesn't make any sense. Like you can see them like they're being called out to the harbor, and a theory is perhaps it's something luring them out there. Like it could be, something paranormal. In fact, that same location, and I think I may have said this on the chat room when she was on the show, that like in the harbor, there have been reports of like orbs coming up from the water and informing a human, like forming, or not human, but a ghost. And so that ghost dates back to the 1600s, that in that location. So maybe something's kind of catching their attention and somehow luring them out to the harbor.
The harbor is not deep. Is it quite cold that they could get hypothermia? So hypothermia is a possibility.
Right, but I think that what interests me the most is the fact that bodies have been in the harbor for 6-7 months, and I gave tours in Boston Harbor during the time that one of the gentlemen his body must have been right next to my vessel the whole summer. I can't fathom that a dead body was by me for 3 months while I was in a vessel, and he appeared 6 months later. It doesn't make any sense. We have so much traffic in the harbor that the part that freaks me out the most is how long they're able to stay in the harbor without being noticed.
Why do you think it is paranormal? Do you think something is possessing these young men to cause them to commit suicide in a way?
I don't know I think that there's something luring them out there. So it could be like a siren, or it could be a cryptid. It could be an alien. I don't know. I don't know what it's luring them, but it doesn't make any sense. Whatever it is, if you watch the footage, it's like they're being pulled out to the harbor, and it could be a possession. It could be something that is more UFO, which is not my specialty, but it's just like they're in a trance.
That trance, do you think then that they are, and I mentioned this moments ago, possessed, but I guess what I'm saying is, do you think they're possessed by a ghost that is maybe from the areas where these young men are being taken from? Is it quite haunted with spirit? Has anybody from a paranormal community actually gone down there to see if maybe there's a witch or something along those lines, or that has been haunting the area for a long time?
Well, I alluded to this when I was in the chat rooms the night that she was on the show. Deer Island, which is very close to the area, it's one of the closest islands to Boston Harbor. There was a Native American massacre on that island that no one talks about. It was called Devil's Island. People, Native Americans that converted to Christianity, were put on the island. Hundreds of them were put on the island with no clothes, no shelter, no food. It was like Survivor. These men and women and children were left out there for about 6 months during the cold New England winter. And I strongly feel like that maybe there's some Native American ties to that. I'm not sure what it is. It has not been investigated. In fact, I don't want to talk too much about it because I think it's what I'm working on now. And I do want to take the paranormal perspective to it. And that's why I've taken a job at the aquarium, which is right near where all the bodies were found, to keep an eye on it, because I think that there may be a paranormal slant to it. And, it's a situation where the family members are still living, and I want to be respectful to those people. And I'm wary of it, but I get lured into it as well. I want to know what happened.
I want to know what happened too, because the parallels, like we said a few minutes ago, the parallels between all of these young men is so similar. To me, I would look at it and say, okay, and maybe I'm looking at this from a way too human perspective, but I'm thinking either, young heartbroken woman maybe hates men and maybe she was dumped in the area or killed by her estranged boyfriend or husband in the area, and maybe she takes it out on all the young, successful men that are in the area. Do you look at scenarios like that when you're trying to piece together where all the clues are quite similar?
Yeah, I mean, I can't help but look at it from a paranormal lens. I mean, when I heard the story, what initially attracted me to it, my assistant at the time, who we're no longer working together because we kind of fought over this, he strongly felt like what was going on was explainable. It was just an accident. They were drinking. They were so drunk, in fact, that they ran into the harbor. But they were not. They were not drunk, and that's the part that freaks me out the most. Now, in some situations, the victims were intoxicated, like once or twice. But the Zach situation, to me, is quintessential of what is indicative throughout all the different missing men of Boston, vanishing men of Boston, is that they weren't drunk. He was with his family. He stepped out for a smoke outside the bar. You see in the video footage, he's kind of without his jacket outside. He's looking, and it's like he was entranced by something.
So are you buying into the theory, then, that this could have anything to do with the infamous smiley face killings, or do you think it's more abnormal and paranormal?
I think the smiley case, I think the smiley face story, it doesn't, there's no indication of a smiley face. Like, part of the smiley face murders is that they leave a smiley face at the murder scene, which we have not seen in Boston. What we have seen in Boston is just the fact that it's not a robbery, and that the bodies have remained in pretty good condition in the harbor for months. Now, Zach was found a couple of weeks after he went missing, but you kind of know that it's around this time of year, it's usually February, it's around the same time every year, that these young men go missing. And I think strongly that we need to look at it as a paranormal community, look at it. But every time I mention it, people kind of, we were talking earlier about kind of raised eyebrows and kind of like mocking us. This is the case that people mock you. So they're like, that's a conspiracy theory. But I really think, I'm getting a strong hunch that there's something more to this than we know.
We only got about 90 seconds left before we are going to go to break here. Do you see anything cracking in this mystery, either on the paranormal side or on the human side of this? Because it seems like this count has been going on now for a number of years. It doesn't happen a lot, but the patterns are always similar when it does happen. What do you think?
I think that it's going to unfortunately take more similar situations to happen before, because I didn't start thinking about this until the last situation happened. And so I am, unfortunately, it's going to take it to happen again for people to maybe to revisit the conspiracy theories involving that.
Gotta love a good conspiracy theory. It just sits wonders with me. Does wonders for me, my friend. It really does. A quick question from Eric here. Have they tested the bodies, as far as you know, for evidence of having been stored in a chill box?
Yeah, they rule it as an accident. So I'm not privy to the autopsy report, but I'm a journalist, so I know how to get that information. I'm in the beginning stages of my interest in this, and I'm kind of here. I'm kind of called to the location to kind of keep an eye on what's going on.
Right, and on that note, we're going to hop out for our final break of the night. Author Sam Baltrusis is joining us here on Spaced Out Radio. We got 1 hour left with Mr. Sam. Your questions, fire them up if you want to talk anything paranormal right after this. We'll be right back.
The SOR Sightlines is a place for you to find answers to your strange experiences. Hi there, this is Mike Schmidt. If you have had an encounter with ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot, ETs, or anything else that doesn't make sense, head to spacedoutradio.com and file a Sightlines report. All information you give is 100% confidential, and I will personally help you find the answers you need. SOR Sightlines, your answers are a click away.
Have you got your Cosmic Passport? If you need one, tune in to Cosmic Passport on Spaced Out Weekend. This is Elizabeth Anglin, ET experiencer, spirit medium, and host of Cosmic Passport. Each weekend I'll be bringing you interviews and support from other paranormal experiencers, and the best in intuitive spiritual guidance from across the globe. It's all happening starting at 9 p.m. Pacific Time, midnight Eastern, on spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4COP. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
This is your medium, Joanna, from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 mediums and a large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you checked out the SOR Spacewire at spacedoutradio.com yet? Every day we post the latest stories regarding the weird, strange, and completely unbelievable. From cryptid and UFO sightings to the conspiracy world, we tackle it all. Hi there, I'm Eric Markham, Space Out Radio's news director for the SOR Spacewire. And if you have a story, I want to hear it. Email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit's story box. The iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
A child grew up too fast, went running wild. Now we don't know who to pray to anymore.
Welcome back to the final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you along with us. It's been a long, great week on the show, but after this hour, I've got my bag packed. I'm heading into the wilderness to find my Zen, my Chi, maybe a good Wi-Fi signal to catch. Spaced Out Weekend with Elizabeth Anglin and Uncle Jimbo James Tyson as they take over the cabin to bring you the weekend shows, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time, at the mighty spacedoutradio.com. I hope you take the time to tune on in. That would be much appreciated on this end. I also want to remind you, if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Make sure you head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. We want to welcome in everyone listening live in Las Vegas on Renegade Talk Radio. Thank you for letting us be your nighttime choice in Sin City. And, of course, if you're listening in on the United Public Radio Network live on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world, thank you for choosing us for your listening ears. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. I don't even know how to pronounce this. I really don't. I know I butchered it in the first hour coming out of the gates, but this one scares me. It really does. Koyo Oxygy. That's all I'm saying. I believe it scores about 37 in Scrabble, if you include the 10s for the Q and the Z, or pardon me, 8 for the X and 10 for the Z. It's good points if you play in Scrabble. But Bill sets a password each and every night on the SOR Space Travelers Club, and yes, he loves to try and tongue twist me every single night. Tonight he got me. I'll get you, my pretty. I'll get you. Hey, if you want to follow us along on social media, you can do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. You can also use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio in order to chat with me live during the show. You can give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes. And, of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for just $5 a month. Tonight we are talking with paranormal author Sam Baltrusis, who is also putting on the 2017 Provincetown Paracon in Provincetown, Massachusetts. Sam, welcome back.
Hey, Dave. How's it going?
It is fantastic, man. Fantastic. I got to tell you, I had a stressful day today, and I can honestly say, man, I apologize to you publicly because I don't think you're getting my best today. But, I want to thank you for coming on and for being with us and being a trooper tonight, because today's been a long day for me, a long, long day. So I'm just wanting to say I'm at about 70% tonight, and you're getting the best 70% I got. So I do apologize for that.
Dave, even your 70% is very good. So I appreciate being on your show again. I also had a very long day. I had a radio show right before this, so I'm losing my voice, but I'm very passionate about this, and I'm very passionate about your show. So I think that it's all good.
You're too kind. You're way too kind. We were talking about the missing men of Boston right before the break. Right. Gail is asking right off the bat here, how many men have died in that harbor?
Yeah, I'm not the expert on it. I just am literally kind of interested in it. It's a dozen at least. But Elise, who was the blogger who was on your show, she's more of the expert on it. She writes a whole blog about it. God bless her for doing that. That's something she's doing out of her interest. And to me, what she's doing with this case is what I hope is the future of journalism. So she's a good example of someone who is following the case just out of interest and out of her passion for knowledge. To me, that what she's doing is the future. So I support what she's doing. So I'm not the expert on this. I'm just I'm interested in approaching it with a paranormal lens. I haven't written a book on it or even started doing the research on this. So I'm not the expert, but at least a dozen.
No, I understand that, but it is something you are looking into because it is one of those situations where it falls right up your alley.
It does, and I'm kind of blown away. I think what really intrigued me was when Elise was on the show, like that no one is looking at it from a paranormal perspective. So I'm like, to me, this reeks paranormal. And in fact, I have my friend Christine, who I'm doing an event with. She's a psychic. She's actually the vendor coordinator for the Provincetown Paracon. She's a psychic. We're actually going to go out and hopefully do our thing, which is, channeling, where she's going to channel and hopefully use her psychic abilities to tap into what really happened.
When you look into the way the paranormal is situated, where you have so many different types of groups out there, Sam, where you have the ones who believe they are truly doing scientific work, you have the ones who are trying to solve the riddle of mankind, you have the groups out there that are just there to debunk everything because they're skeptics and they want to take everything in a skeptical way. Which side of the ledger do you fall on in regards to the paranormal?
Well, I am friends with all those people. So I have friends who, for example, the Provincetown Paracon, I'm not going to name names, but I had one person that I invited and I got tons of, angry responses. Like, I'm not going to go to the Provincetown Paracon because so-and-so is going to be there. So there's a lot of infighting, and generally it's over those different topics, whether or not that there are science people who are out to debunk people. And I'm friends with those people, and I use them as experts in my books. But I'm also friends with people who are the para-celebs and who are the ones that are constantly debunked. So I try my best. I mean, I'm a journalist, and I try my best to be objective, and I try my best to not to tick them off, because I think that I need all those voices to do what I do. Mm-hmm. So I fall in the objective. The one I'm not siding with any of them. I'm friends with all of them.
Mm-hmm. No, and I can understand that. I have friends on all sides of the ledger too, and I often question a number of people and say, why are you in this? Why are you in this field? Are you here just to play Pokemon Ghost? Or are you here to just try and, bring some logical, or what you feel is logical fact to an interesting topic? Like, what are you trying to prove? Because there always seems to be someone And I realize it's in society too, but there always seems to be someone with an agenda in this field.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the worst agenda is someone that gets in the field to be on television. Those people are the ones that I don't necessarily gravitate toward. The ones I see, my interest is definitely, I don't want to be on television. I don't want to be on radio shows. I think that, but I do think by doing those things, it actually gets your work out there, and it also gets you, people talk to you, and you get more sources. So it's kind of like my motivation is not to get a television show. And to me, that out of all the different types that are in the paranormal field, the ones that are in it for the fame are in the wrong place. And there's no money, absolutely no money in this whatsoever. It's not a money maker. You do it because it's a calling. It's something that that you have to do.
Mm-hmm. I can totally understand that. But if you were to set up a paranormal team, how would you set it up?
Kind of like how I set up the Provincetown Paracon. I think that I pick people who offer different perspectives. In fact, I tried to do that when I arranged the lineup, and I think I did a really good job at finding people from all walks of life, hopefully who can come together and be at a convention. But, there's specifically within the paranormal community, there's a lot of bad blood, and there's a lot of politics, and say so-and-so got on the show and they didn't, and all this is whatever. So I try my best to stay out of the infighting that goes on in the paranormal community. There's a lot of, people feel like that they own a location. So if they investigated, say, the USS Salem, they want to claim ownership of that. And the truth is, the USS Salem is it's a historical location that is not just for one investigative crew. It's open to multiple investigative crews, and it needs to be investigated by different people. So when I put together a team, I go for diversity.
Do you believe psychics should be a part of a team?
Yeah, I mean, my first book, I very much didn't think that psychics should be part of it. My second book, it was heavy psychic, and that book bombed. So I don't think that psychics should be a part of it, but yet I do get involved. I do think that I'm friends with a lot of psychics, so I think that I do think that there are good ones, and I think that there are ones that actually could hopefully give me answers when it comes to some of the things I do. But my books tend to not focus on the psychic perspective because it's so it's subjective, So and there's a lot of crazy in the psychic world.
There is a ton of differing opinions regarding psychics because some of them are absolutely fantastic. Others, you're just not too sure whether or not they are actually having some sort of ability whatsoever rather than opinion. When I look at the paranormal, and I'm curious to get your opinion on this as well, I see a lot of people quoting fact from their opinion. Do you notice this as well, and what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I try my best to approach what I do as a journalist, so that is to, if it's opinion, to present it as opinion. I went as far as to go, like, my books are separated by, like, my 13 Most Haunted series is all opinion. It's not fact. But my other books, like the Ghost to Salem, Ghost to Boston, Ghost to Cambridge, and Paranormal Provincetown are objective, and they're not my opinion, except for the introduction. So I think it's important if you write an op-ed to state that it's an op-ed.
That's one of the things that I find very disappointing about this field is how much we are actually having people state facts when it's just their opinion. And they're claiming it to be science. They're claiming it to be full-on truthful research. And I'm perturbed by that because I try and do things on this show. If I'm giving my opinion, per se, I'm going to let people know that's my opinion. Okay?
Right.
Otherwise, we try and stay right down the middle at all times. I think that's the integrity we try and have. But if I look at, and I'm just going to give a Bigfoot example here, Sam, for a moment. I hear a lot of Bigfoot investigators say, you know, it's a hominid, it's something that has been in North America its entire life. We don't believe the stories of people saying that aliens are after it. We don't believe people who say that they've seen Sasquatch disappear right in front of them, or see them pixelated, or believe they're shapeshifters like the First Nations people do. We believe this, I am firmly a believer that this is, you know, scientific studies showing that this is a great ape of a North American variety. Well, there's no proof.
Right.
You know, and a lot of times we have people stating their opinion as full-on proof to try and get their point across.
Yeah, those people are dangerous. I mean, I think that, and getting to the earlier question, not from you, but from one of the people asking about who should they turn to for information? Those are the people that you turn off. You know, like the ones that state opinion as facts.
That's probably my biggest pet peeve in this field. You know, and when we get back, you know, like talking about the whole paranormal journalism topic that I'm going to be speaking at your conference, that's one of the things I'm actually going to be focusing on, is how often do we have to hear opinion as fact? You know, it just bothers me, man. It just, you know, it's like fingernails down a chalkboard. It just drives me absolutely haywire when I see that happening. And actually, I've actually had a couple of people tell me behind the scenes, Dave, if you're so strongly against that, why aren't you challenging these people more? So I think that's going to be my deed for 2017 on this show.
to be more challenging.
Well, I think at times we have to be able to call BS because, you know, whether it's paranormal investigators, you know, like for instance, we have an affiliates page on our website, Sam. And when we have, and I get a number of groups coming up, hey, we would like to affiliate with you, you know, what do we have to do? And I'll ask them point blank, you know, what do you believe? What are you researching? And the minute they use the word science, they're out. Okay? They're out because there is nothing you are doing that is scientific. All you're doing is conducting research. If you're not, you know, if you're not there trying to solve answers to these questions, or you don't have a goal in what you are trying to solve, really, you're conducting nothing. All you're doing is playing geocaching, Pokemon Go, whatever you want to call it, with spirit. What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm friends with people who are supposedly scientific, and I think that you can have a science background and be in the paranormal. So if you have, like, say, you're, you know, a chemical engineer or like a you know, forensics expert. I mean, I tend to I don't get as pissed off about using science when they describe themselves, like real science, real answers, whatever their slogan is. But what's interesting with those people is that, you know, I personally, this is my opinion, I personally think that this is not scientific. To be able to present it as scientific is ridiculous. I think this is purely, I mean, you can say it's purely entertainment, but I definitely think that there's no science to this. And there are science elements to it, but it's not, there's a forensic science, or there is a science element to it, but it's not a scientific driven, you know, profession, or it's an interest. And there's, you know, if there's anything, it's folklore. It's like or it's storytelling, and we're looking at motifs that recur over and over again. And that's more my expertise, and it's definitely not science.
It's funny because one of the guys on my team, Eric Markham, who's going to be at the Provincetown Paracon with me coming up from North Carolina, he's picking me up at the airport, by the way, just so you know.
Oh, good.
I just have no idea where I'm flying into. But the whole funny part about it is when, you know, Eric is a scientist, okay?
Right.
Eric actually has his bachelor's of science. He works as a medical technician. So he's a pretty smart dude. And him and I have had this conversation ad nauseum, man, about, you know, the way that a lot of these groups conduct their research, saying, "Oh, we're on a scientific breakthrough" or something like that. And I just shake my head, you know, because this is the best way that you can tell whether or not they're full of it. What do you do with your evidence? Well, we collect it and we go through it and we see if we caught anything anomalous. Great. What do you do with it after you've gone through with it? Well, we combine it with our other evidence. Great. What do you do after that? Well, what do you mean? What do you mean? You know, and you wouldn't believe how many people cannot answer that question. It's unbelievable, Sam.
Well, again, I'm friends with some of those people, and I think that you can use that information, you know, like, for example, plotting, finding recurring motifs, like taking the information, like say there's hauntings throughout New England, and plotting those locations, and then finding sort of recurring things, like for example, the hauntings are by water or they're by train tracks. Or there's something there's granite beneath them. There's, you know, it's all quartz or whatever. So there could be that data can, if they do collect the data, you can do stuff with that data and actually, you know, find recurring motifs within that data.
What about the technology of it all, Sam?
Well, I you know, some of those science people that I'm referring to, they're big about developing new, you know, tools to use out in the field to be able to investigate. So, you know, I bless them for trying that. If they are scientists, and they would try to build equipment that would be more sound, like not novelty. Like there's a lot of novelty in the investigative world, and like the ghost hunting apps, and all those sorts of things. And I'm a paranormal researcher. I'm not an investigator, but I do some investigations. And when I do investigate, it's very old school. It's like pendulums and, you know, dowsing rods and EVP sessions and that sort of thing. I don't do the ghost box or spirit box, because that stuff is BS. It's like not real investigation.
Why do you call it not real investigation? A lot of people would say, Sam, what the hell are you talking about in regards to that?
Well, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, well, I'll tell you, I have done. I mean, I have been in the room where there's been a spirit box session, and it's blown me away. I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, this is like so freaky how they're answering the questions. So it doesn't make any sense, like why the spirit box would actually be a tool to connect with the paranormal world. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, I view it as a novelty, and I kind of scoff at that on those TV shows because it's very theatrical. But yet I've been a part of spirit box sessions, and I've been kind of blown away. So I don't know. I mean, I try to be objective, and I actually have used that as evidence in my book. So people said, like, I did a spirit box session at the Lizzie Borden house, and these are people that I respect in the business who have done that. But what concerns me though is when someone does a spirit box session and they claim that they're like they're EVPs, and like those are not EVPs. EVPs are, well, I mean, they're both electronic voice phenomenon, but they're not using a recorder to record a voice, a voice. These are actually radio voices that occur from radio. So it's I don't know. I mean, it's the way that the spirit box is set up that makes it not as more of a novelty.
Would you consider the ghost box more like oral pareidolia?
Yeah. You're going to hear what you want to hear. Yes, but I also think that taking that in mind, I think that there have been direct responses with names that are shocking in some situations. So it's probably coincidence, but but again, I have seen it. It's blown me away, certain spirit box sessions, but it is, I kind of take it with a grain of salt.
Mm-hmm. No, I don't blame you there whatsoever. Would you consider yourself a skeptical type person then? Like, do you feel...
I started off very skeptical because I kind of came from the journalism world. And if you read kind of like my first book versus my most recent book, I've definitely become more of a believer as I progress. So I was really, really cautious my first book about not going there and kind of like covering, all bases where I'm objective and, journalistic in my approach, and I don't make broad, I don't present opinion as fact and all sorts of things. And that was my first book. And as I got more and more, involved with the paranormal world, I have definitely, I've let my guard down to a certain degree. But I came in a skeptical believer. I had experiences as a child. I do think that ghosts are real. And I do think that, but I just don't know what they are. I mean, I'm the stone tape theory type person. I think the energy is left at a location, but I've been kind of, since I've gotten more and more involved with the paranormal, I've had an attachment this last season, and it was real for me. Like, I really had an attachment, and my personality changed, and it was just something that I don't wish on my worst enemy. So I've had things by being out in the field that make me more and more a believer.
Let's talk about that attachment for a second. What happened to you?
Okay. So I was working on the USS Salem for about a month and a half, and that was in my opinion, a very active location. It was, we had something strange happen night after night. And we were doing a haunted attraction coupled with a paranormal experience on the USS Salem. I was beat down. In fact, after working, I was the manager of this. This is a huge naval cruiser. It's almost like a battleship, but it's not quite as large of it as a battleship. It's called a cruiser. And I had my employees, crying because they were terrified. It was just it was so high drama over a month and a half period. So I was beat down, and I was tired. And I did an event in Topsfield, which it was, really, I was also working in Salem as well. And I did an event at Topsfield where I was, it wasn't really a seance per se, but I was channeling, it was kind of like a theatrical performance. And it was a money raiser for a historical organization. So I was trying to, revisit the spirit, to communicate with the spirit. I was kind of did it in a joking way. Well, that spirit connected to me. And so the spirit happened to be a murderer. And when I say that, I would have laughed at that 6 months ago. I would have yeah, okay. But so I came home, my personality changed. I was kind of like in a cloud, and I had a shaman literally Facebook message me to tell me about my attachment. He was like, he's 28 years old. He is ostentatious. He's very loud. And basically he was describing the guy that I kind of jokingly channeled at this VIP function. And he did a cleansing on me. So I didn't believe, and now I do.
I know what it's like to channel, my friend. It's one of those things where you just end up getting into a situation where it's weird when there's something in your body. It is very weird.
And I know how to handle that. I know how to protect myself, but I was so beat down that I allowed that to happen. And I thought there was no way that would happen at that location. But I learned a lesson that this is real and you can't play around with this stuff.
Do you now, when you go into a haunted area, protect yourself, and if so, how?
Yeah, I mean, I always go in with the thought of a white light of protection around me. I went into the U.S. of Salem, and we tried everything to keep the spirits at, it was the most active location. I had, people that had scratches. Like, the ghosts were attacking my employees and attacking my guests. It was a very unsafe environment. So the white light of protection can only protect you so much. I also have a protection pendant. I kind of come from the shaman approach to protection and cleansing. So I do believe in smudging. I think smudging does cleanse an area. But the problem with the U.S. of Salem, we couldn't have any flames on the U.S. of Salem. So we had to cleanse the location with holy water and not with the typical smudging, like the sage smudging that you normally do.
So are you using sage? Are you using Palo Santo wood? Myrrh? What are you using?
Yeah, I mean, I use a Native American smudging approach, so I do use sage. I also, I will call in people to do cleansings depending on the location. For example, we were on the U.S. of Salem. We could not light a sage. We couldn't light. There couldn't be any fire on the vessel. So what do you do? Christine actually did. She's my psychic friend. She did a holy water cleansing ritual, and it seemed to work. So I normally use sage with the shaman approach to cleansing spirits. So I would sage it, and I would go to someone who could do that, could smudge or cleanse an area.
For people who have never channeled before, explain to them what it's like to have a spirit inside of you.
It's like you're in a tunnel and you're in the very back of the tunnel and you're not in control of what you're saying or doing. And that that you're there, but you're not in control of you. So it's like you have a large cloud kind of on top of you, and that you're pushed in the back and you can't speak.
It is different for a feeling when you're kind of out of control on your body, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of like my worst nightmare, I realize. I didn't, I've heard people talk about attachments before, and I had an experience actually in New York City that I did write about in my most recent book, where I did have an attachment. I didn't know what was going on. So I've had that experience, but this is, I've been sober for many years. So this is not like a, alcohol induced, hallucination. This is something that happened that was very scary. And what's even more scary about it is the person that I was channeling was committed a heinous crime.
How many times have you channeled?
Again, I don't do it. I don't do it, and I did it on accident. So I don't do it on purpose. I did it as I was in the room. I was recreating a story about the Crown and Shield murder that happened in Salem, and I was talking about it. And I was in the room. I summoned the spirit to, and I did it without thinking that it actually would happen, and it did. So I don't do it on purpose.
I have done it on purpose. I'm not going to lie. I have done it on purpose. And, if you don't have that protection going in, it is definitely a weird feeling. And, it was, believe it or not, Sam, I don't know if I ever told you this. It was a channeling session that I didn't know I could do, or I didn't even know what channeling was, that got me involved in this entire field of 5 years ago. All when I had an experience that I couldn't explain. And
yeah, it's very powerful. It's like it really depends on what you channel. And for me, me too. I've always had a fear, and then I went from a fear to a passion to tell her story after a situation where there's channeling and there's attachments. There's two different things. An attachment is something that, like a channel, if you successfully channel, you can have the spirit, you can connect with the spirit and in a seance, but then you let the spirit go. What happened with me is the spirit followed me home.
So how did you notice that it was attached to you? What was going through your body? You said your mood had changed.
Yeah, I mean, this is right. So I came from a very stressful month and a half in October. So that's my busy season. And I was beat down emotionally. I thought that I was just emotionally tired, but I felt very lethargic. I was on edge. My mood changed completely. I also had sort of nihilistic thoughts, so like really negative thoughts. And a big way to combat negative energy is to raise your vibration. And I've always really worked on raising your vibration. That means to prayer, meditation, to have to raise your vibration. And at this time, my vibration was very low. And I reached out to Joni Mahan, and I'm like, Joni, this is going on. I don't know what's going on. And she's like, oh my God, you have an attachment. And she actually reached out to the shaman who reached out to me. So this is why I have friends in the field, because they help me when I need them. And Joni was there for me.
It is important to have a good support group if you're unsure about what's going to go on. Because that's one thing that I'm lucky enough, as I step more into the paranormal side, to have a good support group who understands the dangers of this, rather than it just being a game that a lot of people are playing these days, these weekend paranormal warriors. It really is something that you really have to be careful of. And why do you think a lot of people in this field refuse to take that portion of the paranormal investigation seriously?
I think that people that if they don't take it seriously, they never had the personal experience. I think once you do have that personal experience, if you survive, if you come out of it without because attachments aren't good. I mean, if you've had an attachment, it can end up in suicide. You can end up in the harbor. There's tons of things that can happen to you. So I take this very seriously. I think that people don't take it seriously until they have seen firsthand what can happen.
Just remember, don't go near a harbor in Boston. But then again, you're pretty safe. You're out of the age category. You're pretty safe.
Exactly. Yeah.
You got nothing to worry about.
I have friends who are in the age group and fit the demographic, and I'm like, listen, no going to bars near the Boston Harbor in February for you.
I can see why you would do that. I can totally see why you would do that.
But I've taken a job that literally puts me on the harbor, and it's like I'm looking for anything that may be potentially paranormal that would explain what's going on. I haven't yet, but you never know. I mean, I feel that's what I do. I literally I immerse myself in a location, and it could be 3 to 5 months, and nothing happens. And that one moment that does happen, that's worth it. It's worth that time that you put into it.
When you get a rookie coming up to you asking for paranormal advice on that they want to get into the paranormal, they want to go ghost hunting, whether it's stars in their eyes or whether it's just because they have a mild fascination or maybe they lost someone close to them that they just want to see if they can learn how to connect. Step by step, what advice do you tell them?
I'm really big. So I've said before, I've been on radio shows where the host wasn't necessarily knowledgeable about basic paranormal things. And I can, I'm an instructor, so I write books, but I also teach as well. So I approach things as a teacher. So I try my best to point them in the right direction and, not necessarily yell at them like, that's wrong, but kind of maybe admonish them or kind of correct them and nudge them in the right direction. But that's, that's what I do. I mean, I'm a nice guy, but I do have, my pet peeves, and that when it comes to, like, your pet peeve is like people claiming that they're scientific in their approach. My pet peeve is people that work in the business who have they don't know what they're talking about, so, or they don't go out in the field and do the work, and I do tons of book signings, and I have people that come up to me all the time that are interested. Like, I'm interested in the paranormal, and like, what should I do? I mean, literally, reach out and join a local investigative team. Don't go to the Provincetown Paracon. We have people that are experts in the field talking about what they do, and they will help you. So I'm big about to not be mean to these people, but also to kind of nudge them in the right direction.
And that's the key, is to have these people learning the right parts of the paranormal. Do you think the lack of education in the field of paranormal, Sam, is probably its biggest downfall? Because really, there is no degree for this.
Right. There's no PhD. Although I'm looking into possibly not making a degree in paranormal, but maybe I would like to go to divinity school and maybe use the paranormal as my area of focus, because I do think there should be a PhD in paranormal. but yeah, I mean, there is wide degrees of education, and I think that it's the bar, like I was saying earlier, I think the bar is raising, and I think that I'm getting more and more impressed with the quality of people who are in the middle of it. Because I think when I first started, I was really not happy with the books that were out there, and but I think that the bar, people are definitely doing better work, and I maybe it's the TV shows, maybe it's just other books, other authors are doing a better job, and they have to up their ante when it comes to their approach. And the books that stink, that are poorly written, are not being people are not buying them. So it's a competitive environment, and the crap gets kicked to the side, and the good stuff rises to the top.
How important is it to try and develop some sort of educational tool or regulations in this field? Because let's face it, it is the Wild West when it comes to paranormal. We have teams who are trouncing and wrecking places. We have teams who are bullies, saying, getting places to sign contracts so no other investigative team can go into those museums or hotels or bars. It really is cutthroat. Do you think that with more education, we could be able to establish some sort of rules and guidelines for this field?
I think that it is the Wild West. I think that by doing what I'm doing with the Provincetown Paracon, I'm kind of taking the steps to maybe do something like that. I think that there aren't any regulations, so it's more people have to get the permission to be able to be at a certain location in some situations. Yeah, the whole exclusivity. I've been thinking a lot about that lately, because there's a lot of people who feel like that certain locations in New England are their locations, and that they specialize in that, and other investigators should stay away from those locations. We're getting a lot of people who are the exclusive psychic of a specific location. In fact, one of my sponsors of the Provincetown Paracon is the exclusive psychic of the Lizzie Borden house in the Fall River. So that does exist, the exclusivity. But I think that journalism. There isn't the only regulations are. I mean, there's the AP style book, and there are guides to journalism, but a lot of it is taught from generation to generation, and from being out in the field. And I kind of feel that way with the paranormal. I think that it's our job as elders or people that are the veterans in the industry to work with the young people to hopefully give them the tools to be able to do what they need to do a good job.
So if you could set up a course to define the paranormal, what would it include for a lot of these people who want to learn?
I think that Joni's some of her books are actually perfect. I would use as my course material because there's like dark and scary things. It's like basically it's paranormal 101, and I think that like the basics, like what's a residual haunting, or what are her book, Her Dark and Scary Places, actually is perfect for the basics. Like the basics in paranormal. And so I think there's a lot of conflicting takes on specifics in the paranormal world. Like, Hans Holzer actually, in my opinion, he is that guy, that go-to guy for defining what is going on as far as paranormal phenomena. Like, what is a poltergeist activity? What is, he's the one that came up with the stay behind, which I think that definitely should be considered as a classification of paranormal encounters. And stay behind is a spirit that doesn't know that they're dead, or a ghost that doesn't know they're dead. But my go-to person for that element is Joni Mayhan.
So if you're setting up a course, then you and Joni, let's say, are setting up a course, how would you break it down into categories of what really needs to be the focus on paranormal? I could tell you how I would. It would be the rules and regulations, the do's and don'ts, okay?
Right.
How you treat a client, how you respect a client's privacy, their wishes, courtesy has to be part of it. We also have to get into the investigation side. Can you rule out a psychic just because you don't believe it? Can you rule out things like the ghost box just because you may not believe in the audio pareidolia, pardon me. Okay. And then the main point of it all is, what are you trying to solve? Because as well as I do, being in journalism, the whole idea of journalism is focus. You have to have focus. And that's one thing that a lot of these groups are flying by the seat of their pants. They don't have that focus to try and figure out what it is that they are trying to solve. And there's no point wasting the time if you don't understand what you're trying to solve. So do you think it would go along those lines for you as well, Sam?
Yeah, I think that, we're kind of doing that at the Provincetown Paracon, where we have a day of lectures on March 13th, where I have people from all walks of the crypto world, from John Brightman, who's fantastic in investigation techniques. We have Adam and Amy, who I feel like are innovative in their approach to investigating. So I'm kind of doing that. I'm kind of assembling Paranormal 101 day, but it's in Provincetown, May 13th.
And that's what it needs to be. A lot of these paracons out there, getting back to the whole paracons that we were talking about in hour number 1, a lot of these paracons would actually probably be more beneficial to people who have an interest in the paranormal tree if they were able to make it kind of like a weekend school to teach people.
Yeah, and that is my approach, but I'm not presenting it that way. So I'm kind of like, it's like school, but it's not. I want it to be fun too. So like if you say that, hey, this is a day of school on the paranormal, then people won't show up, but they'll show up if you package it in a different way. But that's what the Provincetown Paracon is, basically a weekend school. It's school, but a fun school.
Well, we'll just keep that between us, that you're not really going to school, We'll just keep that. No, this isn't school. This is fun. Just bring your pen and paper.
Yeah, and we're going to have a test at the end, by the way. But, yeah, the thing is, if you're going to go to school, Provincetown is the most beautiful place to go to school, so I wouldn't mind that. And, and I think that people are hungry for these types of situations. They want to go to learn. And I think especially my readers, are very intelligent. And I think that I'm offering them something that will enrich their lives and hopefully will teach them a thing or two, and hopefully educate them in my world.
Once again, and we only got about 6 minutes left here until we got to wrap things up. This 3 hours has flown right by tonight, and we knew it would. It always does with you, my friend.
It always does. Yeah, I know.
And trust me, my audience is getting more and more pissed off at how quickly this show is going for them on a nightly basis than I am. So I guess what I'm saying is, with the Paracon, what made you decide that you wanted to do this? Was it the education part? Was it because it's a challenge that you really haven't taken on before? Tell me the selfish answer of this.
The selfish answer is that I felt like people in the paranormal world that I respect were not having a platform, and I wanted to create a platform for them. And, Adam and Amy, they're not, they're on TV, but they're not the 10 people that you see at every Paracon. So the people that are at this Paracon normally don't go to Paracons. So it was to create a platform for people like you to be able to talk for an hour and to hopefully educate, people that come to the Paracon. That's my selfish. It's to give a platform to my friends. That's my selfish motivation.
With it being about just over 3 months away, how's the advertisement? How's everything going with the setup with this?
Yeah, so it's like I said, I really feel like that this is coming together almost magically, and that it's meant to be. And it's strange how I've had to work very hard at getting the word out, but I think that I have a Groupon going. I don't know if you have Groupons in Canada, but we have a Groupon going tomorrow, and I think the initial, we haven't sold a ton of tickets, but the buzz is pretty. It's a snowball effect. So I feel like by May, we're going to have a packed house. And I personally want this not to be I don't want this to be thousands of people. I want it to be hundreds of people who are really passionate about it. So I think for it to be a success for me is to have a smaller, intimate group, but a group that's really into it. And I think that we're doing that. That's what we're doing. We're assembling people that are really into the paranormal.
I just like the fact that you put it in spring, because so many of these are in the damn fall and winter.
I know, and people have complained about that, but I'm like, first of all, I can't do September and October because I'm booked. I'm completely booked in that time of year, so I couldn't do something like this. And Provincetown is a summer destination, and this is, we're basically going to the beach and right before busy season. So we're going to see what Provincetown is like. It swells to 60,000 people 2 weeks after the Provincetown Paracon, which is May 12th through the 14th. So after Memorial Day, it's 1,000 people. When we go, it's going to be people, the year-rounders that live there. And then 2 weeks later, it's going to swell to 60,000 people. So we're coming in right before it gets crazy.
That's great. And, it's one of those things, once again, I've never been to Provincetown, but I'm going to assume it's a pretty beautiful place.
It's magical. It's unbelievably beautiful. And, when you walk there, I have my friend who, he's like, Sam, it's just the street, Sam, but it's so much more than just the street. There's beaches, there's history, there's a lot of restaurants, but to me, what's special about Provincetown is the rocks shimmering on the beach. That's something that you cannot see. I grew up on the beach in Florida, and I just walking down the beach with my best friend and seeing the rocks shimmer is just such a magical thing. And the water, it's ocean. So one side, the beach here in Cove is on the ocean. I'm probably not going to go to the ocean. It's probably going to be too cold. But we're at the very tip of Provincetown. So it's literally we're at the very end. The host hotel is the very tip of Cape Cod. So even the location is magical.
Lots of sharks around there. That's one thing I learned about Jaws. Up and down that East Coast.
Well, my first experience in Provincetown, I thought that it looked like Jaws, like the city in Jaws. It's a typical New England town, and I think it was supposed to be Martha's Vineyard where Jaws was set, but it did look like Jaws. And what's interesting is the ocean, Herring Cove, there's always a shark sighting in that location. So I will not be going to the beach, but I like to walk by the beach, and hopefully the sharks will not jump out and do a Sharknado, So I do walk on the beach, but I don't go in the ocean very much.
If Jaws taught us anything, Sam, that is possible.
Yeah, exactly. I will not be walking on the beach.
Exactly. Hey, we got about 60 seconds with you, my friend. Please fill us in about the Provincetown Paracon, when it is, where it is, and where people can find your books.
So go to provincetownparacon.com. We do have openings. We still have vendor openings. There is upper right-hand corner, hit VIP. I recommend doing the weekend pass. We have a couple of passes for $113. That does not include accommodations. So you have to pay the accommodations in addition to the VIP pass. But the VIP passes are normally $150. You're going to get with a VIP, you're going to get the whole weekend experience, which includes the VIP party on Friday, and then also the lecture series that we just talked about, and then the investigation at night. My books. My name is Sam Baltrusis. Type my name in the Amazon, and I have all my 7 books available. And also go to 13mosthaunted.com is my main website, and that's where I have my radio show, and I also have my upcoming TV show as well.
You're a popular guy, my friend. Sam Baltrusis, thank you for being on Spaced Out Radio tonight, my friend. Good to have you back, and you got an open forum. We're going to do this all again, Sam, as we get closer to the Paracon, because I want to try and get some of your guests at the Paracon on this show for May, kind of leading up to it.
I would love that, and I think that I would love for you guys to do a live remote there as well. Cause
we're going to.
We are going to. Live remote, yeah, because it's definitely conducive to a live remote. You could have the Parasol people that you see on television can be on your show. So I'm looking forward to that.
All right, buddy. You hold on. I want to say thank you to everyone listening in to Spaced Out Radio this week. It's been a great week of shows. I'll be back on Monday. Rachel Kirkland will join me. We're talking shamanism, healing. It's going to be a great show. She's a beautiful lady. Check us out on Monday, but before you do, make sure you stick around for Spaced Out Weekend with James Tyson and Elizabeth Anglin, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time, spacedoutradio.com. To all of you in the chat rooms, all of you on Twitter, and all of you around the world, thank you for listening to Spaced Out Radio. Much love. We'll see you very soon. I'm off. Going into the wilderness. Got my snow boots on. And here I go. Bumblefoot, take us home.